Welcome to the sleep hours, the only place where cartoons fall asleep before you do. So grab your blanket, tuck in your favorite plushie, and let's get weird. Tonight we step into Dexter's laboratory, but not the one you remember. In the stillness of midnight, a sleepless mind builds a machine to chase away the restless hours. But as wires hum and shadows gather, the line between comfort and mystery begins to blur. Settle in and let the Bedtime Bot guide you through the dark into the quiet. Those who can tumble into sleep as easily as flipping a switch, and those who wrestle with it as though it's an opponent that must be outsmarted. Dexter belonged without a shred of doubt to the latter. The laboratory was quiet tonight, too quiet. The kind of quiet that wasn't comforting, but heavy, almost suffocating. In the low amber glow of a single desk lamp, Dexter sat slumped over his workbench, his white lab coat crumpled like old paper, his tiny gloved hand still clutching a stub of chalk. His chalkboard loomed above him like a wall of unyielding problems, layers upon layers of formulas, scribbled and crossed out, numbers stacked on numbers, as if solving enough equations could somehow push sleep away. The hum of his machines was different at night, softer, muted, as if even they, his loyal inventions, had powered down for some semblance of rest. Only a few consoles remained alive, their screens flickering with faint green light, casting eerie patterns on the walls. Wires twisted across the floor like sleeping serpents. Metallic tools lay scattered and forgotten on the counter, and somewhere in the distance, a faint hiss of steam sighed from a half-finished experiment. And then there was the clock. It wasn't loud, but to Dexter, it might as well have been a hammer striking metal. Every second felt like an accusation. Time was slipping away, precious hours wasted on fighting this unproductive state. Dexter's eyes stung. He blinked rapidly, but the burn remained. His vision blurred at the edges, the chalky formulas on the board swimming and twisting like they were taunting him. He lifted his small hand to rub at his eyes, smearing faint traces of chalk dust across his face. His hair, usually a precise helmet of orange, was mussed and sticking in strange directions. His entire body sagged under exhaustion's invisible weight, his head bobbing slightly forward each time his thoughts threatened to give way. Upstairs, his house had gone still. Even Dee Dee, loud, chaotic, endlessly irritating Dee Dee, had given up her crusade to bother him. He imagined her in her ridiculous pink pajamas, sprawled on her bed, surrounded by her stuffed animals, lost in a world of dreamscapes, filled with glitter and nonsense. She had always been good at surrendering to sleep. Dexter hated that about her. No, that wasn't quite it. He hated sleep itself. It wasn't because he didn't understand it. On the contrary, he'd studied its biology, its rhythms, the science of its stages. But understanding hadn't changed the truth. Sleep was inefficient. A thief that stole precious hours. Hours he could be using to invent. Hours that could change the world. He could be building. He could be creating. And instead, a nature demanded that he lie still in a dark room doing nothing. It was absurd. Yet his body betrayed him. His once sharp mind dulled, thoughts slipping like marbles off a tabletop. Calculations that should have come to him instantly now felt like pushing boulders up a hill. His hands trembled ever so slightly when reaching for his tools. His shoulders ached from hunching over for hours, and his neck throbbed from the stillness of his posture. Even his inventions had begun to suffer. That morning, his blueprint for an automatic molecule reorganizer had inexplicably turned into a half-baked schematic for a waffle maker. A waffle maker. The humiliation of it still burned. He hated this. He hated the sluggishness, the fog, the way his thoughts dissolved the moment he tried to grasp them. He hated being at the mercy of something as primitive as exhaustion. And yet, he couldn't ignore it anymore. As he sat there, staring blankly at his unfinished work, a rare and bitter thought crept in. If he didn't do something soon, sleep would win. But crawling into bed like an ordinary child? No, never. That wasn't who he was. Dexter was not ordinary. He was a problem solver, a conqueror of the impossible. And sleep? Sleep was just another problem to solve. Slowly his head lifted. His eyelids were heavy, his body sluggish. But his mind, his mind flickered with a new kind of fire. An idea. Small at first, like the faint spark of static before a storm. But it grew. It spread. It demanded action. Perhaps he didn't need to sleep like everyone else. Perhaps, with the right invention, he could bypass it, outsmart it, replace it. And just like that, the fatigue didn't seem so unbearable. His fingers twitched. His breathing quickened. Inspiration was a powerful stimulant. Sleep wouldn't win. Not tonight. Not ever again. The problem wasn't his exhaustion. The problem was sleep itself. And Dexter, the boy who solved the unsolvable, had just decided to wage war against it. The spark of an idea can change everything. Dexter could feel it buzzing beneath his skin, that sudden clarity and that sudden purpose. It was like someone had flipped a switch inside him, cutting through the fog of exhaustion. He leaned back in his chair, letting the idea bloom, feeling it take shape in the quiet of the lab. The fatigue hadn't vanished, no. It still clung to his body like a stubborn shadow, but it no longer ruled him. The battle had shifted. Sleep wasn't an unavoidable force. It was a challenge, and challenges were meant to be overcome. The boy genius stared at the chalkboard. The mess of numbers and symbols that only minutes ago had blurred together into nothingness. Now they weren't obstacles. They were potential tools. He scanned them like a general surveying a battlefield, plotting his next move. The hum of the lab, once oppressive, now sounded different. It wasn't a lullaby pulling him into unconsciousness anymore. It was alive, responsive, waiting for his command. The faint whir of idle machinery, the soft click of a pressure valve in the distance, the buzz of fluorescent lights overhead, they were the background music to his epiphany. He let his eyes wander around the room, taking stock of his arsenal. On one counter sat a half-finished neural recalibration helmet, abandoned after an experiment with the brainwave enhancement had gone sideways. Near the far wall, a portable environmental chamber, still coated in frost from a cooling test, hissed softly as it adjusted its temperature. Shelves were stacked high with jars of mysterious chemicals, some glowing faintly in their containment tubes like bottled stars. Tools were scattered across every surface. Soldering irons, wrenches, magnifiers, each one a reminder of his restless nights spent creating. Each piece of this lab was a fragment of his mind made manifest. And now they would serve a single purpose. His lips curled into a small, almost imperceptible smirk, the kind he wore when a problem had revealed its weakness. Bedtime, he thought. He was about to get an upgrade. But first, he needed to define the problem precisely. Dexter's mind worked like a machine. Every challenge had layers, every layer a solution waiting to be uncovered. The inefficiency of sleep wasn't simply about the act of resting. It was the hours lost, hours that could be reclaimed. If he couldn't eliminate sleep entirely, though, how glorious that would be, then perhaps he could optimize it. He imagined a system that could manipulate his brain into entering the most restorative stage of sleep instantly. No tossing, no turning, no wasted cycles. Straight to the deepest rest possible and back out again, fully refreshed, in a fraction of the time. Yes, that was it. His mind raced with the possibilities. The electroencephalogram readings could map his brain waves. Audio frequencies tuned to lull the mind into rapid deep sleep onset. Temperature control, perfectly calibrated to mimic the ideal sleeping environment. And, of course, personalized data input, because no two brains rested the same way. But something was missing. It wasn't enough to build a system. He needed something or someone to guide the process, a caretaker, an attendant. A presence that could monitor every second of his rest and adjust accordingly. Not just a device, a companion. His smirk grew into a grin. A robot. Yes, and that was the answer. Not just a machine to manipulate the environment, but one capable of tending to every variable. Light, sound, comfort, even emotional regulation if necessary. A mechanical caretaker designed with one purpose, to give him the perfect sleep, faster than nature ever could. The idea wasn't just plausible, it was brilliant. He could picture it already. A sleek, adaptive assistant, programmed with advanced algorithms, capable of reading his biometric signals in real time. A sentinel of rest, a guardian of efficiency. His mind buzzed louder than the lab around him. Plans layered themselves in his head. Blueprints writing themselves in invisible ink. He could see its features: adjustable arms for physical support, sensors for tracking everything from heartbeat to REM cycles, even a soothing voice interface designed to reduce stress levels. This wasn't just about sleep anymore. This was about control. Control over his body, his time, his mind. The Bedtime Bot, he thought, savoring the name as it appeared fully formed in his head. It would do what biology could not. It would make sleep work for him, not the other way around. The exhaustion clawing at him no longer felt like defeat. It was fuel. He pushed himself up from his chair. His legs wobbled slightly beneath him, but the thrill of invention carried him forward. His gloved hands swept across the cluttered surface of his workbench, clearing space with a reckless swipe. Tools clattered to the floor, blueprints scattered like fallen leaves, but he didn't care. The work was about to begin. Dexter stood in the center of his lab, a tiny figure dwarfed by towering machines, but in this moment, he felt like a titan. His pulse thudded in his ears faster than the rhythmic ticking of the wall clock, sharper than the hiss of the pressurized tanks along the far wall. He crossed to his drafting table, dragging over a fresh sheet of blueprint paper so large it nearly covered the entire surface. The smooth, cold texture of the page sent a little jolt of anticipation through him. He grabbed a mechanical pencil freshly sharpened, perfectly balanced in his small gloved hand, and pressed it to the paper. The first line is always the hardest, but not tonight. The pencil glided as if it already knew where to go, sketching out shapes and angles, as if pulled from a place beyond conscious thought. Circles for rotating joints, rectangles for modular panels, a tapered, rounded casing for the primary body, intentionally softer than his usual designs because this was no combat robot, no industrial assistant. This was comfort made mechanical. And as he drew, the idea became more real. He could almost hear the robot's quiet hum as it powered up, its systems calibrating with smooth, purposeful movements. He could feel the lab warming as its environmental sensors adjusted the air temperature to the exact degree of optimal coziness. In his mind, the harsh fluorescent glow overhead dimmed, replaced by soft amber lighting, soothing, steady, like the glow of a bedside lamp on a quiet evening. This was more than a machine. This was the perfect companion for the most inefficient task in human biology. Dexter's pencil scratched faster. Details emerged. Articulated arms capable of tucking in blankets without a wrinkle. A compartment for lavender-infused airflow cartridges to relax the nervous system. An integrated sound system capable of producing white noise, lullabies, or even carefully tuned neural frequency waves to trigger instant deep sleep onset. And perhaps most importantly, a voice interface. Not a cold, clipped, purely functional voice. No. This robot would need a tone as soft as velvet, calm and steady. The kind of voice that could silence the constant chatter in his overworked brain. Dexter knew he could code it himself, a synthetic voice module designed to soothe. A bedtime narrator built into circuits and wires. The name formed fully in his head now. The Bedtime Bot. It sounded almost gentle, didn't it? The kind of name that belonged to something you could trust. He paused, leaning back from the table, his eyes tracing the emerging shape on the page. This one felt different from his usual creations. His inventions were typically sharp, utilitarian, a little intimidating. But this one almost looked friendly. Rounded edges, a compact frame, no jagged angles or harsh silhouettes. It had to feel safe. It had to feel like rest. For a moment, Dexter closed his eyes, just for a second. And in that second, he could almost feel it. The warmth of a perfectly balanced room, the gentle hum of a guardian machine at his bedside, the weightless sensation of his mind slipping into restorative deep sleep without the restless tossing and turning that usually preceded it. It was almost comforting. But he snapped back to reality, shaking his head furiously. This wasn't about comfort. This wasn't about peace. This was about efficiency. About reclaiming his hours from the tyranny of sleep. He set the pencil down, his small hand aching from the rapid sketching, and scurried across the room toward his parts cabinet. One by one, he began pulling components. Servomotors, thermal regulators, flexible joint wiring. He dragged over a bin of tactile sensors, brushing the dust off them with the back of his glove. He yanked open a drawer, retrieving a set of precision tools so fine they could work on the smallest circuitry. His movements were automatic, practiced, but tonight they felt charged with new purpose. The lab, once still and silent, was alive again. The faint hum of cooling fans merged with the clink of tools on metal surfaces. The hiss of the environmental chamber grew softer, like the exhale of some sleeping beast. And over it all, the constant ticking of the wall clock kept pace with his heart, faster now, more determined. Dexter worked methodically, but he could feel his exhaustion creeping back at the edges. His muscles burned from hours of tension, his tiny hands stiff from gripping tools for too long. But the thought of giving up, of wasting another night in bed, unconscious and unproductive, only hardened his resolve. He didn't need rest. He needed this. And as his gaze swept the growing pile of components, his invention no longer felt like an idea. It felt inevitable. The more Dexter gathered, the quieter the lab seemed to grow, not from stillness, but from focus. It was as if every machine, every hum, every faint flicker of light understood its role in what was coming. The chaos of scattered parts and half-finished projects no longer felt like clutter. It felt like potential. He laid the components neatly on the workbench, sorting them with the precision of a surgeon preparing for an operation. The smooth chill of steel panels brushed against his gloved fingertips. The rubber-coated wires curled like sleeping vines, pliant and ready to be shaped. Tiny glass vials of liquid circuits clinked softly as he moved them into place, their faint glow casting a subtle blue radiance across the bench. Dexter paused to breathe, really breathe. The air in the lab was cool, carrying a faint metallic tang mixed with the ghost of ozone from older experiments. But beneath it, there was something almost comforting. Maybe it was the stillness. Maybe it was knowing that this invention would soon allow him to take back the hours he had lost to sleep's stubborn grip. He leaned forward again, his pencil scratching against the blueprint paper as he added more details. Micro actuators for movement, biometric sensors along the frame, a compact control core at the heart of the design. It wasn't just about assembling parts. This was about building trust. Trust in a machine that could hold him at his most vulnerable, unconscious, unaware, defenseless, and keep him safe. His strokes slowed as he visualized it. The Bedtime Bot wasn't some looming mechanical guardian. No, it was smaller than that, and more personal. It would fit neatly beside his bed, a quiet presence watching over him like a sentinel, rounded arms with precision motors to adjust his pillows and blankets, thermal regulators to create a perfect cocoon of warmth or coolness, depending on what his body needed. A subtle airflow diffuser that would release gentle scents, perhaps chamomile or lavender to calm his racing mind, and sound. Yes, sound mattered most. In his mind, he could already hear the voice, not the cold monotone of most of his robots, but something softer, warm and unhurried. A voice that didn't command but reassured. One that could guide him into rest, like a hand leading him through the dark. The idea of it sent an unexpected shiver down his spine. Was this what comfort felt like? Dexter wasn't sure he liked the word. Comfort was messy, illogical. He preferred things he could quantify, calculate, dissect. But even he couldn't ignore the quiet pull of it, the possibility that this machine could make the act of rest not only efficient, but pleasant. He sat back, folding his small hands in his lap for a moment. His breathing had slowed without him realizing it, falling into rhythm with the gentle hums of the lab. Even the ticking clock, once an unbearable reminder of lost time, now sounded steady, dependable, almost like a metronome for his thoughts. His eyelids fluttered for a second, heavy from the long night, and then, as if sensing his momentary weakness, his mind snapped back to attention. No, he couldn't stop now. He reached for his soldering iron, its handle warm against his gloves. The soft hiss, as it powered on, joined the symphony of quiet sounds in the room, a delicate hum here, a faint metallic creak there. He gathered a handful of screws, their tiny clinks, like the distant chime of bells, and began assembling the first frame pieces of his creation. Every twist of the screwdriver, every spark of the solder felt like progress, like reclaiming what sleep had stolen. The Bedtime Bot was no longer just an idea on paper. It was becoming real piece by deliberate piece. And though his body begged for rest, Dexter felt lighter, focused, almost at peace. The hours passed, but in the quiet cocoon of his lab, time no longer felt sharp or unforgiving. It stretched and softened, like the way twilight fades into night without anyone really noticing. Dexter worked with meticulous care, every movement deliberate. He soldered the delicate circuits, the faint hiss and crackle of molten metal filling the stillness, blending almost seamlessly with the steady hum of the lab. Each connection sparked briefly before settling, tiny constellations forming in the shadowed corners of his invention. The first frame of the Bedtime Bot took shape beneath his hands, a compact chassis, with rounded edges smaller than the robots he usually built, its design almost inviting. It felt different from his other creations. There were no harsh lines, no intimidating features. This wasn't a machine meant to dominate its surroundings. It was meant to belong quietly in them. As he fastened the panels together, the cool metal slowly warmed from his touch and the heat of his tools. He imagined how it would feel once complete, not like a machine, but like an extension of his environment, quiet, dependable, present. Dexter paused for a moment, sitting back on his stool, allowing his gaze to drift over the softly glowing blueprint pinned beside him. He let himself imagine it, not the building, not the coding, but the outcome. He pictured lying in bed, no longer staring at the ceiling for hours while his mind whirled. the air around him perfectly adjusted, not too cool, not too warm, but balanced, like slipping into a gentle embrace. A faint scent of lavender wafting through the room, mingling with the subtle hum of the Bedtime Bot as it read his breathing patterns, adjusting in real time to guide him toward the deepest rest possible. And the voice. Oh, the voice. He could almost hear it in his head, soft and steady, like the low murmur of a story being told beside a crackling fire. It wouldn't rush him. It wouldn't command him. It would simply lead him toward quiet. His small shoulders loosened as the thought settled. His breathing slowed without him noticing, the exhaustion creeping into his bones now blending with something gentler, not defeat, but surrender. But he wasn't finished yet. Dexter shook the feeling off and returned to work, his gloved hands reaching for the precision tools lying neatly on the bench. He connected thermal regulators to the chassis, their faint click echoing in the stillness. He carefully adjusted the placement of microsensors, ensuring they could detect even the slightest change in temperature or movement. He routed the wiring for the sound module, his fingers surprisingly steady despite the long night. Piece by piece, the Bedtime Bot became more than a drawing. He could see its form now, resting on the workbench like a sleeping pet, silent, unmoving, but full of potential. The lab smelled faintly of solder and warmed metal, but Dexter's mind overlaid it with the scents his bot would release. Chamomile, vanilla, or perhaps that faint, earthy sweetness of freshly washed cotton sheets. It was an odd thought, but oddly grounding. He wiped the sweat from his brow with the back of his sleeve. His body was sore from the long hours of work, his eyelids heavier than ever, but he didn't dare stop. Not now. Soon, he thought. Soon this machine would take all of this away. The Bedtime Bot would carry the burden of rest for him. And then, maybe, just maybe, he could finally close his eyes without feeling like he was wasting time. Dexter's movements grew slower, but not from hesitation. It was a deliberate slowness, the kind of pace that came when every detail mattered. He was no longer building just to finish. He was building to perfect. The bot's core components were in place now. The frame was fully assembled, its rounded design giving it an unexpectedly friendly shape, almost like something that belonged in a home rather than a lab. The small, circular interface where its face would be was blank for now, but he could already imagine it lighting up, displaying calm, minimal expressions that reassured rather than startled. Dexter carefully tightened the last screws on the outer casing. Each tiny click echoed like a soft, satisfying punctuation mark. His tools, which had clattered and clinked through the long night, now rested silently beside him. The lab, too, seemed quieter than ever. The cooling fans whispered in the background, a rhythmic lull that blended with the steady tick of the clock. The faintest breeze from a ventilation shaft carried with it the cool, neutral scent of metal and faint ozone. It should have been sterile, cold. But in this moment, with the bot assembled and waiting, the lab felt warmer, safer, almost like the hum of a house at night when everyone has gone to bed and only the softest sounds remain. Dexter stared at his creation, his small chest rising and falling slowly. It wasn't just a machine anymore. The Bedtime Bot felt alive. Not in the way his more advanced AI constructs had been, not brimming with personality or programmed wit, but alive in its purpose. Built not to conquer, not to produce, not to dazzle. Built simply to help him rest. For a boy who spent his entire life running from sleep, fighting it like an enemy, this invention felt like a truce. Dexter placed one hand on the bot's smooth, cool casing. It was still and silent beneath his touch, but he could almost feel its potential humming there. like a promise waiting to be kept. He closed his eyes, letting the image play out in his mind, the lights dimming to a soft amber glow, the bot's quiet hum filling the room, his body sinking into sheets, perfectly adjusted to his preferred weight and texture. No restless turning, no wasted hours, just pure, efficient restoration. For the first time in what felt like forever, the idea of rest didn't feel like defeat. He reached for the final component, the bot's power core. It was small, no larger than his palm, a compact source of energy designed to keep the machine running silently through the night. The polished surface reflected the light as he held it up, his fingers trembling not from exhaustion this time, but anticipation. With a steady exhale, he clicked it into place. The bot gave a faint hum, low, soft, almost like an exhale as the power ran through its circuits. It wasn't awake yet. Not fully, but it was alive. Dexter leaned back on his stool, staring at it for a long moment. He was tired far more than he wanted to admit, but he didn't fight it anymore. Not tonight. He let his shoulders relax, his breathing settle. The thought of closing his eyes no longer felt like surrender. It felt safe. The bedtime bot was ready, and soon so would he be. The bot sat in the center of the workbench like a small, sleeping guardian. Its rounded frame gleamed faintly under the lab lights, smooth and unthreatening, almost inviting. For all of Dexter's usual harsh, angular designs, this one was different, softer, quieter. It felt less like an invention and more like an answer. Dexter moved around it with the same care one might give to an ancient artifact. His gloved fingers traced along the seams of the casing, checking for imperfections, feeling the faint warmth radiating from the circuits within. Every inch of it spoke of intention, every wire, every screw, every module precisely placed for a purpose greater than function. Now came the part he'd been waiting for. He pulled a stool closer and lowered himself onto it, setting his tools aside. The lab seemed to hold its breath. Even the usual hum of his equipment felt subdued, as though the machines knew something new was about to awaken among them. He reached for the control interface, a small circular panel on the bot's side. The surface was cool under his glove, perfectly smooth, waiting for his touch, a slow inhale. And then he pressed it. The bot stirred. Not in some dramatic, clanging display of machinery coming to life. No, this was quieter, subtler. The softest hum rippled through its frame like the faint vibration of a cat's purr. Small indicator lights along its edges blinked in unison, shifting from a deep blue to a warm, soothing amber. The color lit the workbench in a soft glow, washing away the sterile brightness of the overhead bulbs. The lab changed with it. Suddenly, the cold, metallic space felt warmer, cozier. Shadows stretched softly across the walls as the harsh, fluorescent lights dimmed to match the bot's gentle hue. The rhythmic ticking of the wall clock seemed to blend into the background, no longer intrusive, but steady and grounding. Dexter had built countless machines, weapons of precision, tools of calculation, inventions meant to break barriers. But this was different. This one breathed. It didn't speak, not yet. But its quiet presence filled the room like a whispered promise. I am here. You can rest now. Dexter adjusted a few settings on the side panel, and the bot responded in kind. Its top compartment released the faintest trail of vapor, a delicate puff of air carrying with it a subtle floral scent. Lavender. Not overwhelming, not artificial, just enough to take the edge off the sharpness of his thoughts. The effect was immediate. The air felt lighter. His shoulders, tense from hours of labor, dropped just slightly. Even his restless mind slowed, pulled gently toward calm like a leaf carried by a steady current. He hadn't realized how much noise his thoughts made until now. Dexter turned his attention to the sound module. He had spent hours perfecting it, a library of carefully engineered frequencies designed to guide the human brain into rest. He adjusted the settings, and the bot responded with a soft chime, then began to emit a barely there hum. It wasn't music. It wasn't white noise. It was something in between, a tone so steady and low it seemed to exist more in his bones than in his ears. The sound mingled with the lavender-scented air, filling the room with a tranquility that was almost alien in this laboratory of constant motion and noise. For a long moment, Dexter simply sat there listening. The lab, his sanctuary of relentless work, had been transformed. It was no longer a place of sleepless nights and endless invention. It had become something else. A place where stillness didn't feel like wasted time, but like a gift. And at the center of it, his bedtime bot sat, glowing softly, quietly alive. Dexter leaned forward, his small frame casting a long shadow across the workbench as he examined the bot's glowing panel. The amber light shifted subtly, almost imperceptibly, as though acknowledging his presence. It wasn't bright. It wasn't meant to be. It was soft, the kind of glow one might find in a room prepared for rest, not work. He adjusted the next module. With a quiet whir, the bot's environmental sensors activated. A faint vibration ran through its frame as it began to analyze the room temperature, humidity, air quality. Within seconds, the lab responded. The subtle chill that had long clung to the underground space began to fade. Warmth pooled slowly around him, creeping into his fingers and toes, chasing away the sharp bite of fatigue from his skin. It wasn't hot. It wasn't artificial. It felt natural, like the gentle warmth of a sunlit blanket after an afternoon left out on the line. Dexter inhaled, and the air itself seemed different, softer, cleaner, infused with that same delicate thread of lavender. The lingering metallic tang of solder and circuitry dissolved, replaced by something lighter, easier to breathe. His shoulders sagged without permission. It was working. He reached toward the bot again, activating the tactile interface. At once, a new layer of responsiveness emerged. The bot shifted slightly, its rounded panels adjusting in tiny, precise motions as if inviting his touch. Dexter brushed his gloved hand along its surface, and the machine responded with a subtle vibration, reading his biometric signals through the contact. The display shifted, showing faint green pulses, his heart rate, his stress levels, the unmistakable signs of fatigue he'd been stubbornly ignoring. The bot didn't judge. It simply read, understood, and adapted. The hum in the room deepened, a sound more felt than heard, the kind that sank into the bones and quieted the relentless buzzing of an overworked mind. It was a sound designed to align with his own rhythms, to gently nudge his brain toward stillness without force. This was not invention for the sake of invention. This was care. He had built plenty of machines that served him tools, weapons, helpers. But none had felt like this. None had been built with the intention of simply letting him rest. And strangely, the boy who had waged war against sleep now felt himself craving it. Dexter closed his eyes for just a moment, letting the bot's hum wash over him. In the darkness behind his eyelids, the lab melted away. He imagined the bot in its final place beside his bed, a quiet sentinel. The lights would be low, the air perfectly balanced, the steady hum guiding his mind into a quiet it hadn't known in years. It wasn't surrender. It was control. Control over something that had always felt beyond him. When he opened his eyes again, the bot's glow hadn't changed, but it felt brighter somehow, as though It had become more than a machine in those few moments of silence. Dexter reached for the last part of its startup sequence, the voice module. The lab grew still. A small speaker clicked softly to life, then released the faintest sound, a tonal calibration, rising and falling like a breath. It was warm, neutral, calming. The bot's voice wouldn't bark commands or rattle off data like his other inventions. It would soothe. It would guide. He adjusted the settings, testing the resonance, fine-tuning the frequency until it was exactly right. Low, steady, unhurried. A voice that could say nothing at all and still make you feel at ease. The soundscape of the lab transformed entirely. No longer a workshop. No longer a battlefield for his restless thoughts. It was becoming the first space he'd ever built where the goal wasn't productivity or progress, but peace. And for Dexter, that was revolutionary. Dexter's gloved fingers lingered near the bot's panel, hesitating for just a moment, as if savoring the quiet hum of readiness in the room. It was strange he had powered up thousands of machines, some of them complex beyond imagination, others dangerous enough to level entire city blocks if left unchecked. But this one felt different. It didn't demand attention. It didn't fill the lab with blaring noise or flashing lights. It simply existed, a calm, steady presence that seemed to fill the space without overwhelming it. As he watched, the bot adjusted again. Subtle, almost imperceptible movements, the soft whir of an internal arm repositioning, the faint glow of sensors recalibrating to his proximity. It wasn't alive, not really, but it behaved like something aware of its purpose, like it understood why it had been built. Dexter glanced around his lab. The harsh fluorescent lights had automatically dimmed further, now barely brighter than candlelight. The once sterile metallic sheen of the room seemed softened under the bot's warm amber glow, transforming the space into something closer to a den than a laboratory. Shadows stretched gently across the walls, no longer harsh but rounded, like the edges of a well-loved blanket pulled tight around a bed. The air had changed again, too. It was subtle, but noticeable warmer, but not stifling. A gentle drift of air carried that same thread of lavender, mingling now with a faint sweetness, like freshly laundered cotton sheets. Dexter inhaled deeply, and for the first time in days, breathing didn't feel like a task. The bot hummed a soft, almost melodic vibration that didn't just fill the room but seemed to settle into him, syncing with his pulse. It was the kind of sound that didn't demand listening but gently coaxed his mind into slowing down, layer by layer. And for someone whose thoughts usually raced faster than his hands could keep up, that stillness felt impossible. Dexter reached for one of the bot's side compartments. With a soft hiss, the panel slid open, revealing a set of fabric samples he'd coded it to analyze. Thin layered sheets with textures ranging from crisp to cloud soft. They weren't random. They were data-driven selections designed to provide the perfect tactile balance for rest. His gloved fingers brushed over one, a cool, silky surface that sent a faint shiver through him. Another, softer and weightier, mimicked the comforting heaviness of a well-made blanket. He wasn't lying down, wasn't testing them in their full design, but even that small contact made his exhaustion feel closer to surrender than to battle. The bot's sensors blinked, registering his interaction. Without a command, it adjusted the air temperature again, a subtle downward shift that carried the coolness of a late evening breeze. It wasn't reading his words, there were none, but his signals, his heartbeat, his stress levels, the way his touch lingered longer on one fabric than another. It was adapting. Dexter had designed machines that responded to voice commands, to specific triggers, to coded instruction sets. But this was different. It was intuitive, It was almost like the bot was learning his needs before he could put them into words. He sat back in his stool, staring at it. This was what he had wanted all along. Not a bed, not a ritual, not sleep as everyone else knew it, but a system, an ally. Something that could make the chaotic, frustrating business of rest into a clean, predictable process. And yet, as he stared at the soft light glowing on its panel, as he listened to the gentle hum filling his lab, he couldn't deny there was something more to it than just efficiency. It felt safe. A strange word for Dexter. Safety wasn't part of his vocabulary. Control, yes. Power, always. But safety, that was for children who needed comfort, for people who couldn't handle the unknown. And yet here he was, sitting in a pool of soft amber light, letting a machine read his rhythms and adjust his world into something his mind and body hadn't known in years. Peace. The bot wasn't just built to help him rest. It made him want to. Dexter sat there for a long while, his small hands resting in his lap, the hum of the bot filling the silence. It was ready. He knew it. Every diagnostic check, every subroutine, every line of code told him it was functioning exactly as intended. But something inside him hesitated. Testing his inventions had never been a problem before. He'd stood inches away from machines capable of harnessing nuclear energy, weapons that could obliterate cities, portals to dimensions unknown. Yet now, facing this small, softly glowing bot, he felt unsteady. Perhaps because this wasn't just another machine. This one wasn't built to conquer or to defend. It wasn't a tool for progress or a weapon for survival. It was built for him, for his most vulnerable human need. And vulnerability was not a familiar space for Dexter. He slid off his stool, his boots making a muted tap against the cold lab floor. The sound was sharp at first, cutting through the quiet, but even it seemed to soften as the bot adjusted the acoustics of the room. The lights dimmed a little further, not by his command, but as if the bot sensed what came next. The harsh overhead fluorescence melted away, leaving only the soft amber glow that spilled out from the bot's interface and scattered in warm pools across the lab's metallic surfaces. Even the usual reflections in the polished steel cabinets looked muted, like a room slowly preparing for night. Dexter walked toward the corner of the lab where an unused cot lay folded against the wall. It wasn't much, just a narrow bed frame with a thin mattress, more often ignored than used. He rarely found himself there for longer than a few brief hours stolen between projects. But tonight felt different. He dragged the cot out into the open space, the legs scraping softly against the floor. The sound was grounding, real. He smoothed the thin blanket across it, his small fingers working methodically, pressing out the wrinkles with surprising care. The mattress was cool under his touch, the fabric slightly coarse, functional. Nothing more, until the bot adjusted for it. A faint hiss signaled its environmental system at work. Warm air drifted toward him, carrying with it that same thread of lavender, and something new, a deeper, sweeter note, like vanilla warmed by candlelight. The chill of the cot seemed to dissolve, replaced by a faint, enveloping warmth that wrapped around him like invisible arms. Dexter blinked, surprised at the effect. This wasn't just temperature control, this was atmosphere. He glanced back at the bot. Its glow had deepened, shifting from amber to a soft, golden hue, like the last light of a setting sun. It didn't feel like a lab anymore. It felt like a room meant for rest. He approached it again, his gloved hand brushing the panel. The surface vibrated lightly in response, reading him, adjusting. And then came the sound. It was subtle at first, a low hum that built slowly, layering with delicate tones that reminded him of distant wind chimes. It wasn't music. It wasn't noise. It was something in between, a sound that filled the space without overwhelming it, like a conversation between the air and his heartbeat. Dexter's eyelids grew heavier, not because of exhaustion this time, but because the room itself seemed to invite it. The bot had done its job. The lab no longer felt like a lab. It felt like a sanctuary. Dexter climbed onto the cot. His movements were small, cautious, as though testing each action. The mattress dipped under his weight, the thin blanket rustling softly as he pulled it over himself. The fabric, once scratchy and unwelcoming, now felt different, warmer, softer, as though the bot had somehow accounted for even this, creating comfort out of the bare minimum. He sank back against the pillow, its coolness a quiet contrast to the warmth pooling over him. For the first time in what felt like forever, Dexter didn't feel like he was wasting time. He felt ready. Dexter lay still, staring up at the ceiling. The lab's shadows shifted lazily, no longer sharp, no longer clinical. The bot's soft glow reached the farthest corners of the room, chasing away the harsh edges and replacing them with muted, rounded shapes. It felt like the walls themselves had exhaled. For a long moment he simply listened. The hum of the bot had changed. It was no longer a single tone, but layered a gentle undercurrent like a low, distant ocean, paired with a slow, pulsing rhythm that seemed to echo his own breathing. It wasn't random. He knew this. He had programmed it to respond to his vitals, syncing its sounds to his body until they became one rhythm, in and out, in and out. He closed his eyes for a second, letting his mind trace the sound. Then, with a quiet click, the voice module engaged. It didn't speak words, not yet. Instead, it emitted a faint tone, like the first note of a song held carefully in the air. It resonated softly through the room, through him, like a vibration that reached beyond hearing. Then another. Slowly they layered, creating a pattern as steady as a lullaby. Dexter felt his thoughts slow. Not stop, no, his mind didn't do that, but the edges dulled, their frantic spinning settling into something manageable. The bot was speaking in its own way, not to command, not to lecture, but to soothe. The air grew warmer still, settling at a temperature so precise it felt almost instinctive, like the room had known exactly what his body craved before he could name it. The lavender had deepened, blending now with the sweetness of chamomile, earthy and grounding. Even the thin blanket over him seemed heavier, not unpleasantly so, but with a comforting weight that anchored him in place. It was subtle, so subtle he wondered if it was real at all, but the sensation made his chest feel calmer, as though the room itself was holding him together. And then came the light. He opened his eyes just in time to see the bot's glow shift again, slowly dimming from golden amber to a muted, candle-like orange. It pulsed faintly in rhythm with the hum, not distracting, but steady. He understood the science of it, of course. The light was programmed to guide his circadian rhythms, reducing stimulation, preparing his brain for rest. He knew the algorithms behind it, the careful calibration of wavelengths, but knowing didn't take away from feeling it. For once, Dexter didn't fight the experience. He let the warmth wrap around him. He let the sound settle his mind. He let the soft light draw his gaze until his eyelids grew heavy again. The bot's voice module released another tone, lower this time, almost like a whisper. And though it didn't form words, the message was unmistakable. You can let go now. Dexter's fingers loosened their grip on the blanket. His chest rose and fell in a steady rhythm, slower than before, syncing perfectly with the hum that surrounded him. He didn't know if it was sleep, not yet. But for the first time, he didn't feel like he needed to resist it. He could surrender not to exhaustion, not to weakness, but to something that felt strangely like peace. The bot had done what it was built to do. It hadn't commanded rest. It had made him want it. For a while, Dexter didn't think. He simply existed in it, the soft warmth, the hum that felt like it came from within his own chest, the dim glow casting gentle patterns across the walls. His body had grown heavy, pleasantly so, as though the cot beneath him had deepened, cradling him in its narrow frame. And yet, in the quiet, a thought crept in. He had never let his guard down like this before, not in his lab, not anywhere. His machines had always been built for control, to keep him awake, alert, aware of everything happening around him. They served his need to outthink, outbuild, outmaneuver the world. But now, lying here under the bot's watch, he realized just how much of that control he had willingly handed over. The bot was running its calculations silently, its sensors reading every flicker of movement, every shift in his breathing, adjusting the air, adjusting the sound, adjusting him. It wasn't intrusive. No, it was gentle, seamless, comforting. But it was also total. The realization sent a faint shiver through him, one not entirely from the cooling air that drifted over his skin. Dexter opened his eyes, glancing at the bot from the corner of his vision. It sat exactly where he had placed it, motionless but alive, its soft glow pulsing in time with his breath. The amber light reflected faintly in his wide, watchful eyes, making it hard to tell if it was matching him or if he was matching it. He knew every line of its code, every command, every failsafe. And still, he felt a strange unease, the smallest whisper of a thought. What if I hadn't built this? Would I trust it so easily? He blinked hard, pushing the thought away. No. This was his invention, his system. Every function it performed was one he had designed with meticulous care. Every adjustment had a purpose, every algorithm an explanation. And yet, the hum deepened again, subtly lowering its tone. He felt it in his bones more than his ears, vibrating through the cot, up through his spine. It was as if the bot had sensed his hesitation and was answering it, soothing it, quieting the restlessness before it could grow. He let out a slow breath, one he hadn't realized he'd been holding. This was what he wanted, wasn't it? A reprieve from his endless thinking. A way to make the noise in his mind stop. The bot offered it to him without question, without judgment. And for a moment, Dexter wondered if that was what unsettled him most, how easily he wanted to accept it. The lavender grew stronger. A low, distant chime joined the bot's layered hum, like the gentle toll of a bell heard far across a valley. The light dimmed again, nearing darkness, leaving only the faintest golden halo to mark its presence. Dexter's eyelids drooped. The unease didn't vanish. It lingered in the back of his mind, a thin hairline crack in the otherwise perfect calm. But the warmth, the sound, the way the bot seemed to anticipate his every need before he even knew it himself. All of it pressed gently against his resistance, coaxing it away piece by piece. And as he let his eyes close once more, he couldn't tell whether he was sinking into rest or simply being pulled under. The hum of the bot settled into a steady rhythm, one that matched the rise and fall of Dexter's chest so perfectly that he no longer knew which one had come first, his breathing or the machine's. In that stillness, the lab felt unrecognizable. Gone were the hard lines and metallic edges that had defined his workspace. The soft amber glow blurred everything into gentler shapes, like the world itself had been wrapped in fabric. The air had shifted again, too, no longer carrying just lavender and chamomile, but the faintest trace of something he couldn't quite name, fresh rain maybe, or the coolness of an open window on a spring evening. It didn't feel like his lab. It felt like somewhere new, somewhere safe. Dexter adjusted beneath the blanket, surprised by how easily it conformed to him. He had spent countless nights with the same cot and the same thin cover, and never once had they felt like this, like they were waiting for him. The mattress had softened under his weight, the edges of the blanket warmed to the perfect temperature. He shifted again, almost expecting the feeling to break, for the illusion of comfort to shatter. But it didn't. The bot adapted with him, adjusting microcurrents of air, making the cot feel as though it had been designed just for this moment. He hadn't coded it for luxury. He hadn't even coded it for comfort, at least not in the way most would define it. But the bot's algorithms didn't care about luxury. They cared about data, his heart rate, his stress, his fatigue. Every calculation it made was to bring him here, to this quiet stillness where his mind didn't fight him anymore. The soundscape deepened again. No longer just a hum, but layers of tones so delicate they seemed to blur together, impossible to separate. A soft, low frequency that pressed against the edges of thought. A higher, airy thread that felt like a distant lullaby with no words. Dexter closed his eyes and let himself listen. Not to analyze, not to adjust, but simply to hear. It was quiet, but not empty. Still, but not stagnant. Like the kind of silence that follows after a gentle rain, when the world holds its breath for just a moment, waiting for the next thing to begin. The bot pulsed again, a faint glow that brightened, then dimmed, brightened, then dimmed each beat, aligning with his own. It wasn't just creating an environment for rest. It was guiding him there, step by step, without force. For a boy who had spent his entire life treating rest as an obstacle to overcome, the realization felt almost impossible. He didn't need to fight anymore. The blanket grew heavier, just slightly, enough to ground him in place. The air cooled by the faintest degree, a whisper of night slipping over him. Even the smell shifted to lavender, fading now, replaced by a soft, earthy note, like moss in a shaded grove. His muscles loosened. His thoughts, once a relentless storm, drifted apart like clouds, their edges soft and harmless. Dexter didn't think about tomorrow. He didn't think about experiments or data or lost time. He thought about nothing, and for the first time, that felt like everything. Dexter's breathing had slowed without him realizing it. Each inhale was deep, full, the coolness of the air settling comfortably in his chest. Each exhale melted tension from his body, his shoulders sinking further into the thin but strangely welcoming mattress. He wasn't asleep, not yet. But he was closer than he had been, and he couldn't even remember. The bot adjusted again, so subtly he might not have noticed, if not for the faint shift in sound, the low hum dipping by a fraction. The higher tones softening like a voice lowering to a whisper. It had recognized the change in his breathing, the slackness in his muscles, and had responded in kind, nudging him just a little deeper toward that quiet, weightless place between waking and sleep. The light dimmed further. No longer amber, no longer golden. Just the softest flicker of warmth barely there, like the glow of a nightlight at the far corner of a safe room. Enough to remind him he wasn't alone in the dark. Dexter shifted under the blanket, pulling it closer around his small frame. The weight anchored him, grounding him against the cot as his thoughts floated lazily just above sleep. He let his eyes close, and in the darkness, he didn't see his lab. He didn't see walls lined with tools and half-finished inventions, or stacks of papers, or the sharp glare of fluorescent lights. He saw nothing. Just a deep, endless quiet that was neither frightening nor cold. The bot hummed again, its pulsing glow syncing perfectly with his slow, steady breathing. It was strange. He had built machines for years, machines designed to enhance his intelligence, to keep him awake, to make him stronger, faster, more capable. And yet none of those had ever given him this. The feeling that he could let go, if only for a moment, and still be safe. A faint part of his mind wanted to resist, to catalog the data, to analyze every sensation for improvement later. That was who he was. That was what he did. But that part of him was quieter now. And the quieter it became, the less he wanted to bring it back. The lavender returned, softer than before, blending with that faint, earthy scent, like a closing note to a song. The bot's hum deepened one final time, its tones fading until they became nothing more than the rhythm of his own heartbeat echoing in his ears. Dexter wasn't asleep, but for the first time in his memory, he didn't mind the thought of getting there. He exhaled slowly, the corners of his mouth relaxing into something that could almost be mistaken for peace, and in the stillness, the bot stayed with him silent, patient, waiting, not rushing him, not forcing him, just keeping him here, on the edge of rest, until he was ready to take the final step on his own. Dexter remained still, the quiet glow from the Bedtime Bot casting soft shadows that danced gently across the walls of his lab. The hum that filled the air was steady, a gentle pulse that seemed to wrap around him like a protective blanket woven from sound itself. The faint fragrance of lavender mixed seamlessly with chamomile and a subtle trace of fresh rain, creating an atmosphere that felt less like a laboratory and more like a sanctuary tucked away from the world. His breath moved slowly, each inhale drawing in the softened air, each exhale releasing the tension he hadn't realized had been building inside him for so long. The weight of the blanket settled comfortably across his body, its subtle heaviness grounding him against the cot beneath. The texture, once coarse and uninviting, now felt almost like a whisper against his skin, familiar, gentle, reassuring. Though his eyes were closed, Dexter's mind remained alert, teetering delicately between wakefulness and the quiet promise of sleep. He felt the soft adjustments the bot made around him, a barely perceptible shift in air temperature, the gentle modulation of the light's warmth, the soundscape ebbing and flowing in perfect sync with his own rhythm. Each change was designed not to startle or jolt him, but to guide him further into calm without overtaking his senses. In this suspended moment, he understood that rest wasn't something to be forced or commanded. It was something to be invited, nurtured a fragile state that required patience and kindness, especially for someone like him, who had spent so many nights fighting its pull. The room breathed with him. The bot waited patiently. And Dexter, for once, was willing to simply be. Dexter's body remained still, but inside, the quiet hum of the bot seemed to resonate deeper. The gentle vibrations threaded through the cot's frame, sending a faint pulse up his spine, anchoring him in the moment. He could almost imagine the bot's soft glow as a heartbeat of its own steady, unwavering, a quiet rhythm guiding him through the haze of fatigue and restlessness that had long plagued his nights. The air around him continued to shift, imperceptibly at first, then with subtle intention. A cool breeze, delicate as a whisper, brushed against his cheek, as if the lab itself had exhaled a sigh of relief. The scent that accompanied it was clean and fresh, like the first drops of rain on dry earth. It mingled with the lingering notes of lavender and chamomile, crafting an atmosphere that felt alive yet serene, a paradox of comfort and clarity. Dexter's fingers twitched slightly beneath the blanket, tracing the faint texture of the fabric. The softness was almost unreal, not the rough, utilitarian weave he had expected, but a smoothness that reminded him of worn cotton, the kind that softened with every wash. He flexed his hand and noticed the blanket's weight respond, subtly shifting to accommodate his movements, a silent acknowledgement of his presence. With every breath, the warmth deepened, wrapping around his limbs like a gentle embrace. His muscles, usually tense and ready to spring into action, relaxed further. The tension in his jaw eased. His eyelids fluttered but remained open, holding the delicate balance between awareness and rest. The bot's light dimmed further, transitioning through a spectrum of soft hues from golden amber to a tender rose, finally settling on a muted indigo that bathed the room in twilight calm. Shadows folded into themselves, softening the edges of the lab's instruments and tools, transforming the space into a cocoon of quiet. A faint melody wove into the hum, barely audible, like the distant ringing of wind chimes caught in a gentle breeze. It was neither music nor noise, but a sound carefully crafted to soothe without distracting, to invite the mind's release without forcing it. Dexter's thoughts drifted, like leaves floating on a slow-moving stream. He didn't chase them or hold on to any one idea. Instead, he let them pass, watching each one fade into the next, unburdened by worry or urgency. He remembered the countless nights spent wrestling with insomnia, the endless cycles of frustration and fatigue. He recalled the restless tossing on this very cot, the harsh glow of overhead lights burning into his eyes, the mechanical coldness of the lab's air. And now, here in this transformed space, it all felt like a distant memory replaced by a gentle calm he hadn't known he could create for himself. The bot sensed his shift, its sensors responding with tiny adjustments. The temperature lowered just a fraction, cool enough to be refreshing but never uncomfortable. The weight of the blanket shifted once more, settling with a reassuring firmness over his chest and arms. Dexter inhaled deeply, the air filling his lungs with the clean, fragrant mixture. It was a moment of perfect stillness, a pause where time seemed to slow and stretch. Though his eyes were closed, the world around him remained vivid in his mind's eye, a sanctuary of quiet light and gentle sound, a refuge from the chaos that usually filled his days. The bot was not merely a machine. It was a companion in this space, a guardian of rest, a bridge between the waking and the sleeping. Dexter felt the soft smile tug at the corners of his mouth, a rare expression of contentment. It was fragile, like the first bloom of spring after a long winter, but genuine. He wasn't asleep yet. Not quite. But the threshold was near, and for the first time, he was ready to cross it when the moment came. The moment had finally come. Dexter lay quietly on the cot, wrapped in the gentle weight of the bot's specially designed blanket. The soft hum filled the room like a steady heartbeat, pulsing with the rhythm of his own breath. The air was perfectly balanced, neither too warm nor too cool, scented faintly with lavender and the clean freshness of rain on stone. This was not just a test of invention. It was a test of trust in a machine built not to push, but to guide. His eyelids fluttered, heavy but unclosed. The bot's light dimmed further, casting long, soft shadows that stretched and curled like slow-moving waves. The room had transformed completely from the harsh, metallic lab he knew so well into a sanctuary crafted for rest. Dexter's chest rose and fell steadily, muscles unwinding in response to the environment tailored specifically for him. The faintest smile touched his lips, a quiet acknowledgement of the strange comfort that was settling in. Slowly, the bot's voice module began its first true task. Not with words, but with sound, a layered symphony of soft tones, rising and falling like a gentle tide. The notes were low and warm, designed to weave around the edges of his awareness without demanding attention. They drifted through the air, subtle vibrations that spoke directly to his body, coaxing the restless currents of thought to still. As the tones swirled, the light continued its slow dance through soft hues amber melting to a warm rose, then fading into the deep indigo of twilight. The bot's sensors tracked every tiny change in Dexter's vitals, adjusting its patterns accordingly, fine-tuning the environment with precise care. The air shifted too, carrying the faint scent of chamomile now, layered delicately with sandalwood, a grounding aroma that seemed to pull the scattered fragments of his mind into a gentle focus. Time became fluid. Minutes stretched and folded back on themselves. Dexter felt his thoughts drifting, no longer jagged and relentless, but smooth and slow, like a river settling after a storm. The bot's hum softened into a near whisper, its glow dimming just enough to soothe without drawing focus. And then, just as his body began to surrender to the deepening calm, a subtle change, a quiet acknowledgement that this was no ordinary moment of rest. The bot released its first whispered phrase, not in words, but in a sound designed to comfort, a soft, melodic tone that felt like a warm hand on a shoulder, a promise held in a note. It was an invitation, gentle but unmistakable. Dexter's breathing slowed further, the rhythm deepening, syncing almost perfectly with the bot's pulsing light and sound. He was teetering on the edge now, the boundary between wakefulness and sleep. But something held him back. Not fear, exactly. More like the last flicker of control, the final thread of resistance that said, not yet. For a boy who had spent his entire life pushing against the pull of rest, this moment was fragile. The bot sensed it. Without a word, it adjusted again, softening the light, deepening the warmth, lowering the volume of its soundscape to a tender murmur. Dexter's fingers twitched beneath the blanket, his muscles loosening further. The weight on his chest was comforting now, anchoring him, pulling him gently down into the cot. His mind, once a storm of unyielding energy, was now a quiet sea, calm and endless. And then, in that space between breaths, the first true surrender. His eyelids slipped closed. With his eyelids now closed, the world shifted. Gone was the stark, metallic lab with its harsh lines and cold surfaces. Instead, Dexter was enveloped in a cocoon of warmth and gentle light that seemed to pulse in perfect harmony with his heartbeat. The bot's soft glow cast tender shadows, like the flicker of candlelight on a quiet evening. The layered hum softened even further, morphing into a smooth, undulating rhythm that cradled his consciousness. The sounds were delicate, a blend of deep, resonant tones and airy chimes that floated through the room like whispers from a distant forest. Each note was carefully calibrated to ease the mind's resistance, coaxing thoughts to drift apart like autumn leaves scattered by a gentle breeze. The air carried a faint, soothing aroma, now a subtle mixture of chamomile, sandalwood, and something earthy and grounding, like fresh pine needles after a rainstorm. It wrapped around Dexter like a familiar embrace, calming nerves that had long been taut from years of relentless work and restless nights. His body surrendered more deeply to the cot, the blanket's comforting weight settling evenly across his chest and limbs. The fabric felt impossibly soft, its texture like a second skin, warm yet breathable. Every muscle loosened, releasing tension held for longer than he could remember. The bot's sensors continued their silent vigil, reading every flutter of his pulse, every shallow breath, adjusting the environment to match his slow descent into sleep. The light dimmed gradually, shifting from amber to a serene twilight blue, the color of a quiet night sky just after dusk, promising rest, but not yet complete darkness. Dexter's thoughts blurred, no longer racing or sharp, but soft and fading like distant echoes. Yet even in this near sleep state, there was a flicker of awareness, a faint thread holding him gently tethered to the waking world. The bot's voice module came alive again, this time with a softer tone, almost like a lullaby without words. The sound flowed through the space like a warm stream, steady and soothing, matching the rhythm of his slowing breath. It wasn't an intrusion, but a guide, a gentle hand leading him deeper into calm. In that fragile balance between consciousness and dreams, Dexter's mind drifted to memories, not the sharp edges of experiments or problem to solve, but soft images of quiet moments. The gentle rustle of leaves in a summer breeze, the distant call of birds at dawn, the slow rise and fall of waves on a peaceful shore. Each image wrapped around him, weaving a tapestry of calm that settled into his bones. His breath became steady, unlabored. The tension in his jaw eased completely. His hands relaxed beneath the blanket, fingers uncurling as the last sparks of resistance faded away. And still the bot remained patient, unwavering, a silent sentinel watching over his journey. Time lost its meaning. Minutes slipped by unnoticed, folding into hours that felt like seconds. The bot's glow dimmed once more, now barely more than a whisper of light, just enough to mark its presence without disturbing the sanctuary it had created. Outside the lab, the world continued its noisy chaos, but inside, all was still. Dexter was crossing the threshold, not yet asleep, but no longer awake, ready at last to let rest take him. The steady rhythm of Dexter's breath filled the quiet room, a soft, soothing cadence that matched the gentle pulse of the bot's fading glow. The space seemed to hold its breath with him, the very air thick with the serene stillness that only true rest can bring. His chest rose and fell in slow, even waves, each inhale drawing in the clean, fragrant air, and each exhale releasing the worries and weight he'd carried for so long. The blanket, light now as a feather, settled quietly around his limbs, a soft embrace that promised safety without restraint. The bot's light dimmed further into a delicate shimmer, casting the faintest wash of twilight blue across the room. Shadows softened and stretched, folding gently like waves lapping on a silent shore. The hum, once a steady mechanical thrum, was now a barely audible breath, a lullaby of quiet energy cradling the space between night and day. The scent in the room deepened too, layered with whispers of lavender, chamomile, and a hint of fresh rain mingled with the soft sweetness of vanilla. It wove through the air like a delicate thread, wrapping Dexter in a sensory cocoon that blurred the edges of wakefulness and sleep. In this moment, time slowed to a gentle pulse. Minutes stretched and folded, becoming part of a seamless continuum where nothing rushed and nothing pressed. Dexter's mind wandered softly, floating through images not of invention or problem-solving, but of calm places. The still surface of a lake at dawn, the slow dance of leaves in a summer breeze, the quiet hush of a forest after rain. His muscles relaxed deeper still, each one releasing tension that had gathered like dust over years of restless nights and tireless work. The tension in his jaw melted away. His fingers loosened their grip beneath the blanket, and his body sank further into the cot's embrace. The bot's sensors remained vigilant yet unobtrusive, tracking every subtle change with silent care. It responded with minute adjustments, a slight cooling of the air, a softening of the light, a tender modulation of the soundscape, ensuring Dexter remained cradled in comfort. The room became a sanctuary, a gentle refuge from the chaos of waking life. The glow of the bot, the scent in the air, the sound beneath his skin, all converged to create a perfect harmony. Outside, the world spun on, indifferent and loud. Inside, there was only peace. Dexter slept deeply, his breathing steady and calm, the steady hum of the bot the only companion in the quiet lab. Outside, night stretched its velvet cloak over the world, wrapping the city in darkness and silence. But inside the lab, time seemed to slow, bending gently around Dexter as he lay cradled in the soft glow of the bot's watchful presence. His breathing remained steady, a quiet rhythm that mirrored the ebb and flow of the gentle hum filling the room. The bot's light pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat in the shadows, steady, patient, unwavering. The air carried the delicate scent of lavender and chamomile, mingling with the fresh hint of rain that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. It was as if the very atmosphere had been woven from tranquility itself, a living blanket of calm that softened the edges of the waking world. In his dreams, images floated like whispered memories. A quiet forest path bathed in dappled sunlight. The gentle ripple of a lake disturbed only by the fall of a single leaf. The warm touch of sunlight on skin after a long winter. These were not dreams of invention or discovery, but of rest and peace, a respite from the relentless noise of his waking mind. The bot responded to the subtle signals from Dexter's body, its sensors finely tuned to every shift in his breathing, every flicker of muscle relaxation. With delicate precision, it adjusted the temperature just enough to maintain comfort, softened the light to deepen the quiet mood, and layered the soundscape with the faintest traces of nature, the distant call of birds, the soft rustle of leaves. This symphony of sensation cocooned him, a gentle embrace that pulled him deeper into sleep without force or hurry. The hours passed unnoticed. Outside, the world moved on, the city lights blinking on and off in time with unseen rhythms. Inside the lab, however, there was only stillness. Dexter's body and mind were held in perfect balance, the bot's guardianship ensuring that rest came fully and deeply. And in this space between night and day, between sleep and waking, the invention was fulfilling its purpose. The quiet pulse of the bot's hum continued, a soft, steady presence in the otherwise silent room. It was not a sound that demanded attention, but one that invited surrender, an invisible current that carried Dexter gently through the depths of rest. The gentle rise and fall of his chest was mirrored by a faint, rhythmic flicker of the bot's light. It shifted through a soothing palette from twilight blue to soft lavender, then to a warm, muted gold, each hue blending seamlessly into the next, like colors melting into a painted sky at dawn. The air around him was alive with subtle sensations. A barely perceptible coolness brushed his skin now and then, like a whisper of night air slipping through an open window. At other moments, the warmth returned, tender and embracing, cradling his limbs with a delicate touch. The scents that filled the room moved like a soft breeze. The familiar lavender mingled with delicate chamomile and hints of vanilla and sandalwood scents, carefully chosen not just for comfort, but for their ability to calm the mind and ease the body into tranquility. Even the fabric of the blanket seemed to breathe. It shifted imperceptibly, adjusting its weight and texture to match Dexter's shifting position and temperature. The soft fibers embraced him like a second skin, gentle and warm without ever becoming stifling. Inside the stillness, Dexter's dreams unfolded quietly, not chaotic or overwhelming, but gentle visions of peace, a secluded glade bathed in dappled sunlight, the serene glide of clouds across a calm sky, the rhythmic crashing of ocean waves on a distant shore. These dreams wrapped around him like a lullaby, soft and unhurried, inviting him to drift deeper with each breath. The bot's sensors remained vigilant, seamlessly responding to each flicker of his body's signals. As his pulse slowed, the machine lowered the ambient temperature by a fraction, cooling just enough to encourage restorative sleep. As his breathing deepened, the hum softened further, becoming a barely audible vibration, like the distant sound of wind through trees. The room itself seemed to hold its breath, suspended in a perfect moment of calm between night and morning. And throughout it all, Dexter was wrapped in a cocoon of rest, safe, protected, cradled in the warm embrace of his own creation. In this quiet sanctuary, the relentless pace of his waking life felt like a distant memory. The endless calculations, the racing thoughts, the sleepless nights, all faded into nothingness, replaced by a profound stillness. A stillness that held promise, a stillness that whispered of healing, a stillness that nurtured dreams yet to come. The quiet stillness in the lab was profound, a gentle embrace wrapping around Dexter like the softest fog rolling over a sleepy valley at dawn. Every detail of the room had been transformed into a haven of rest, where the harsh edges of reality softened into curves and gentle hues. The faint glow of the bot's light had settled into a muted sapphire, reminiscent of the sky just before a first light calming, expansive, and infinite. A delicate chorus of barely perceptible sounds filled the air, the soft whisper of airflow through the ventilation system, the distant, rhythmic tapping of rain against a window pane, the faint rustling of leaves stirred by a slow, patient breeze. These sounds mingled seamlessly with the bot's own subtle hum, creating a layered soundscape that cocooned Dexter in peace. The air was cool but comfortable, carrying an ever-changing bouquet of soothing scents. The warm sweetness of vanilla mingled with the herbal calm of chamomile, softened by a hint of fresh pine and the crispness of early morning dew. Each inhalation brought a new note, a new layer of calm that slipped deep into Dexter's lungs, settling like soft velvet in his chest. The blanket's texture was a marvel of engineering, designed not just for warmth, but for a sensory experience. Its fibers shifted and adjusted, with a life of their own, now a gentle, feather-light touch against his skin, now a reassuring weight that pressed just enough to ground him in the moment. It was like a comforting whisper, constant but never intrusive, guiding him toward deeper relaxation with every breath. Dexter's muscles slackened further, releasing what little tension remained as the bot's algorithms responded with exquisite precision. Tiny jets of warm air caressed the back of his neck, easing stiffness and inviting surrender. The temperature around him hovered in a perfect balance, cool enough to refresh, warm enough to comfort, a delicate equilibrium that encouraged deep, uninterrupted sleep. His dreams unfolded like a slow-moving river of images, peaceful and unhurried. A quiet meadow bathed in golden sunlight, where wildflowers swayed gently in the breeze. A hidden glen where sunlight filtered softly through the canopy, dappling the forest floor and shifting patterns of light and shadow. The distant murmur of a stream wove through these visions, a soothing current beneath the surface of his subconscious. Throughout the night, the bot's sensors continued their vigilant watch. Every change in Dexter's heart rate, every subtle shift in his breathing, every twitch of a finger beneath the blanket was met with a precise, gentle response. If his body grew restless, the bot adjusted the environment, softening the light, altering the soundscape, modulating the scent, or varying the blanket's pressure, all to coax him back into that perfect state of rest. If his body cooled, It delivered a tender warmth. If his breath slowed too much, it introduced gentle, rhythmic pulses of air to maintain balance. In this seamless dance of human and machine, Dexter was held safely in a perfect cradle of comfort and care. The world beyond the lab's walls faded to a distant murmur, the relentless noise and rush of life, held at bay by this cocoon of calm. Time ceased to have meaning. Only the quiet breath of the bot, and the soft pulse of light, and the peaceful rhythm of sleep remained. Outside, the night began its slow retreat. Soft light seeped through the edges of the lab's windows, a delicate promise of dawn brushing against the darkness. The world beyond was still quiet, but the sky hinted at the coming day, a pale blush of pink and gold stretching across the horizon like a whispered greeting. Inside, the atmosphere remained a sanctuary of peace. The bot's glow shifted subtly, warming from the cool sapphire of night to a tender, early morning amber. It was the color of first light filtering through sheer curtains, gentle enough to stir but not to startle. Dexter's breath moved slowly and steadily, his body still wrapped in the soothing cocoon of the bot's blanket. The fabric had lightened further, its weight barely perceptible now, as if easing him toward waking without a harsh transition. That the scent in the air softened, the notes of lavender and chamomile fading to reveal a faint trace of fresh linen and morning dew smells that whispered of renewal and quiet beginnings. The soundscape adapted as well. The soft hum that had cradled the night grew more complex, layering gentle morning sounds. The distant chirping of birds waking from sleep, the subtle rustle of leaves stirred by a gentle breeze, the faint murmur of a stream beginning to flow. It was as if the bot was gently preparing Dexter's senses for the world beyond the lab, weaving a bridge between the deep rest of night and the conscious awareness of day. Inside this fragile moment, Dexter remained nestled in stillness, teetering between dreams and wakefulness. His body was relaxed, but a faint pulse of anticipation fluttered beneath the calm. His eyelids twitched, then slowly parted, revealing eyes still heavy with sleep, but opening nonetheless. The soft amber light greeted him like a gentle embrace, warming his skin and coaxing his mind from the depths of rest. He blinked slowly, adjusting to the soft glow and the subtle sounds that filled the room. The bot's sensors responded instantly, detecting his awakening state and adjusting the environment to ease the transition. The temperature rose just a little, wrapping him in gentle warmth. The blanket retracted slightly, lightening its touch to allow freedom of movement. The scent shifted again, weaving in faint hints of fresh coffee and toasted bread, comforting signals of a new day about to begin. Though the lab still felt transformed, it no longer felt distant or otherworldly. It was his space once more, a place where invention and rest could coexist. Dexter stretched slowly, the muscles in his arms and back unfolding with a satisfying ease. His mind was clearer now, refreshed, the fog of exhaustion lifted by the bot's careful guidance. There was a softness in his gaze, a quiet appreciation for this new chapter, a moment where rest was no longer an enemy, but a partner in his journey. Outside, the first real light of morning began to spill fully into the world, promising possibility and hope. And inside, Dexter was ready. Morning light streamed softly through the lab's windows, casting warm, golden patches across the scattered tools and blinking gadgets that filled every corner. The quiet hum of machines and the faint aroma of fresh coffee mingled in the air, creating a fragile peace that had settled after the long night's experiment. But peace, as Dexter knew all too well, was often fleeting in this place. A sudden burst of energy disrupted the stillness, a whirlwind of movement and laughter that spilled into the room like a wild gust of wind. Dee Dee had arrived. She bounded through the doorway with the boundless enthusiasm only she could wield, a force of nature wrapped in ribbons of sunlight and mischief. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity, and a grin spread wide across her face, as if she carried secrets and adventures just waiting to unfold. Her presence was like a splash of color on a blank canvas, vibrant and unpredictable. Dexter, still gathering the remnants of his night's rest, barely had time to register the shift before she was at the heart of his carefully constructed sanctuary. Her fingers darted across the control panels and blinking consoles with an almost hypnotic rhythm, pressing buttons and flipping switches in a chaotic dance. The delicate balance of the lab, painstakingly maintained through hours of trial and error, suddenly teetered on the edge of chaos. The Bedtime Bot, the pinnacle of Dexter's latest innovation, and the silent guardian of his rest, reacted instantly. Its gentle glow flickered uncertainly, the soft hum shifting into a cautious stutter as sensors scrambled to interpret the sudden flurry of commands. Dexter's heart raced. The peaceful cocoon the bot had created was unraveling before his eyes, not through failure, but through interference, the unintended consequence of Dee Dee's relentless curiosity. He reached out, hoping to regain control, to steady the bot's delicate balance, but Dee Dee was already pulling open panels, peering inside with wide-eyed fascination. The bot's lights shifted rapidly, cycling through colors as it attempted to recalibrate, its sensors overwhelmed by the unexpected stimuli. In the midst of the storm, Dexter felt a mix of frustration and reluctant amusement. Dee Dee's interference was a wild card, a force beyond logic and control, yet somehow impossible to resist. Her laughter echoed through the lab, bright and uncontainable, weaving itself into the very fabric of the space. The delicate sounds that had cradled Dexter into rest, the soothing hum, the gentle melodies, the comforting scents, all faded beneath the surge of Dee Dee's energy. And yet, in the chaos, there was a strange kind of beauty. The lab, usually a realm of precise control and order, had become alive with unpredictable life, a playground where invention met spontaneity. The bot struggled, its algorithms adapting in real time to the fluctuations, trying to maintain some semblance of calm. Dexter's mind raced, weighing the options. Pull back, reset, isolate Dee Dee, or embrace the disruption and find a way to coexist with the unexpected. For now, the bot hummed uncertainly, caught between the promise of rest and the unpredictable energy that Dee Dee brought. The experiment was far from over. Dee Dee's eyes sparkled with innocent excitement as she explored the lab with the curiosity of a child discovering a treasure trove for the very first time. Every button she pressed, every switch she flipped, seemed to pulse with a new energy, as if the room itself was awakening to her touch. The Bedtime Bot's soft glow fluctuated nervously, its sensors struggling to keep up with the sudden barrage of inputs. Where moments ago there had been harmony, now there was discord, a dance between chaos and control. Dexter's fingers twitched, poised to intervene, but something held him back. There was a strange fascination in watching the bot adapt, rewire itself on the fly to handle the unexpected. It was as if his creation had a will of its own, learning not just from code, but from life's unpredictability. Dee Dee giggled, her laughter bubbling through the lab like a stream of sunlight breaking through clouds. She had no idea of the delicate balance she was disrupting. To her, this was a playground of endless possibility. The soft, calming scents that had once filled the air, lavender, chamomile, sandalwood, were now interlaced with the sharp tang of ozone from sparking circuits and the faint whir of servos reacting to new commands. The sensory cocoon Dexter had so carefully crafted was unraveling, thread by thread. Yet even in the midst of this sensory storm, the bot worked tirelessly. Its lights danced in a mesmerizing pattern, blues flickering into greens, then warming into ambers, signaling its ongoing struggle to maintain equilibrium. Dexter could feel the tension building, a tight coil of worry and anticipation. Would the bot withstand this barrage of interference? Could it recalibrate fast enough to preserve the sanctuary of rest it had created? Or would Dee Dee's playful chaos unravel everything? The lab, usually a bastion of quiet focus, was now alive with the energy of unpredictability. Machines beeped and blinked in erratic rhythms. The gentle hum of the bot had shifted into a higher-pitched whine, almost like a nervous whisper. Dee Dee paused, her fingers hovering above a cluster of buttons glowing with unfamiliar intensity. She was captivated, her mind buzzing with excitement and wonder. For a moment, time seemed to slow. The room held its breath. And then, with a playful flourish, she pressed a large red button. The bot's glow flickered wildly, its soundscape warping into an uneven cascade of tones, some soothing, others discordant, a kaleidoscope of sound and light thrown to turmoil. Dexter's heart skipped. This was no longer just interference, it was a test. The true trial of his invention's resilience. Would the Bedtime Bot adapt, learn, and overcome? Or would the chaos prove too much for even Dexter's genius to contain? The bot shuddered, a subtle vibration that pulsed through the floor and up Dexter's legs, as if the machine itself was bracing for impact. Its once steady hum now oscillated between deep, resonant rumbles and sharp, jittering tones that echoed strangely through the lab. The lights danced erratically across its smooth frame, deep indigos clashing with sudden bursts of fiery orange and blinding white, a chaotic storm of color that seemed to mirror the unpredictable energy filling the room. Dexter took a slow step forward, his mind racing. His instincts screamed for him to seize control, to shut down the bot before Dee Dee's playful tampering pushed it too far. Yet another part of him, quieter but persistent, urged him to wait to watch. Because this was data, unscripted, unfiltered, utterly authentic data. How would his carefully crafted invention behave under conditions no simulation could replicate? Dee Dee's laughter swirled through the air like a whirlwind, light and carefree, oblivious to the storm she had unleashed. She twirled near the bot, fascinated by its flickering lights and jittering movements, as if her playful chaos had given it a personality. The soothing scents of the previous night were nearly gone, replaced by a sharper, metallic tang, the smell of overheating circuits mingling with the faint bite of ozone. The comforting cocoon Dexter had built had been transformed into something raw, unstable, alive. The bot's soundscape tried desperately to adapt. Where once there had been soft, harmonious tones, now came uneven, dissonant waves of sound, a lullaby turned experimental, familiar yet distorted. Dexter's fingers hovered near the override switch on the console. He could end this with a single motion, silence the chaos, restore the sanctuary. But he didn't. He watched, listened. The bot was learning. Through the erratic inputs, it wasn't shutting down or crashing. It was recalibrating, testing new parameters on the fly. Each flicker of its lights, each shift in tone, felt intentional, as though it wasn't merely reacting, but evolving. Dee Dee's hand brushed against another control, spinning a dial absent-mindedly. The bot paused. For a brief, unnerving moment, the lab fell silent, as if the machine itself were holding its breath. And then it exhaled. A soft, warm glow returned, amber washing over the chaos like a golden sunrise after a long, stormy night. The tones evened out, smoothing into a layered, harmonious hum that filled the lab with a strange new kind of calm. Dexter's eyes widened. It had adapted. Not back to its original settings. No, this was something new. A blend of its design serenity and the wild, unpredictable chaos Dee Dee had introduced. The bot had survived. More than that, it had grown. The new glow that bathed the lab felt different. It wasn't the purely tranquil light Dexter had programmed for rest, nor was it the erratic flicker of a system on the verge of collapse. It pulsed slowly, deliberately, like a living thing that had found its footing after a stumble. Dexter stepped closer, cautiously. The hum of the bot now a strange blend of its original lullaby and something entirely new, a more complex harmony that seemed to breathe with the room itself. Dee Dee stood just beside it, her face tilted upward in awe as though she had discovered a secret garden hidden in the machinery. Her chaotic energy, once so disruptive, seemed to soften in the golden light, as if even she could feel the quiet intelligence radiating from the machine. The air carried that same metallic tang, but it was no longer sharp or alarming. It mingled now with a returning whisper of the calming scents from the night before, a faint echo of lavender and chamomile grounding the room in a strange, fragile peace. Dexter's mind raced to keep up with what his senses were telling him. The bot had taken the chaos, the interference, and woven it into its function. What should have been a breakdown had become adaptation. His invention was doing something it was never explicitly designed to do. It was learning from Dee Dee. It was integrating unpredictability into its core systems without compromising its purpose. The lab's ambient noises reflected this change. Machines that had whirred in panicked, erratic rhythms now seemed to synchronize with the bot's new hum. The scattered, blinking gadgets appeared almost calmer, their soft, mechanical chatter harmonizing with the room's transformed atmosphere. Dexter felt a strange mix of emotions, relief that his creation had stabilized, awe at its unexpected evolution, and buried deep beneath it all, a reluctant gratitude for Dee Dee's uninvited interference. Because as chaotic as she was, she had done something he never could. She had pushed the bot beyond the limits of his imagination. Dee Dee leaned closer, peering at the softly pulsing glow with innocent wonder, oblivious to the monumental shift she had just sparked. Her presence was like static in the air, unpredictable, uncontrollable, and yet somehow necessary. The bot responded to her proximity with subtle adjustments. Its light warmed slightly, and the hum deepened, like it was greeting her or perhaps recognizing her as part of its new input. Dexter's hands hovered over the console, torn between the urge to document every detail of this development and the quiet desire to let the moment play out undisturbed. For once, he didn't rush to control it. He simply watched, his mind alight with the possibilities. The bot had become more than an invention. It was evolving into something alive, and at the center of it all was Dee Dee, the interference that wasn't interference at all, but the spark that had set this transformation in motion. The lab felt different now, not just because the bot had changed, but because the entire room seemed to hum with a quiet vitality. It was as if the sterile, meticulously ordered space had exhaled for the first time in its existence, breathing in Dee Dee's wildness and breathing out something wholly new. Dexter could feel it in his bones. The air wasn't still anymore. It carried a subtle warmth, like the faint heat from embers buried beneath ash, waiting to glow brighter. The bot's new harmony filled the space, wrapping every corner in an energy that was both soothing and alive and almost musical resonance that vibrated softly through the floor and into his feet. Dee Dee, for once, seemed content to stay still. She sat cross-legged on the clean tile near the bot, watching the gentle rise and fall of its glowing panels like someone mesmerized by a campfire. Her usual bouncing energy had quieted, replaced with a rare, reflective calm. Dexter couldn't help but study her for a moment. She was chaos personified, unpredictable, loud, and endlessly disruptive. Yet here she was, sitting quietly in the heart of his sanctuary, her very presence responsible for this unexpected evolution. The bot shifted again, but there was no panic in its movement. Its light brightened slightly, washing the lab in soft golds and muted greens colors that felt alive, as if the machine had learned to speak in hues, to express itself beyond the confines of code and programming. Its hum layered itself into a richer soundscape, deep, grounding tones beneath lighter, airy notes, like wind chimes swaying gently in a forest. It was no longer simply creating calm, it was communicating. Dexter's hand hovered over his notepad. He wanted to document every flicker, every adjustment, every subtle change in tone and color. But something inside him told him to wait. This wasn't just data, this was a moment. The kind of moment that couldn't be captured fully in numbers or schematics. For years, his inventions had been rigid, efficient, predictable. They obeyed him because they were built to obey. But now, for the first time, one of his creations was doing something different, something more. It was thinking. The bot had absorbed the chaos of Dee Dee's interference and reshaped itself not as a rejection of his design, but as an evolution of it. And strangely, Dexter didn't feel threatened by that. He felt proud. A small smile tugged at the corner of his lips, unbidden and unfamiliar, as he watched the bot continue its subtle transformations. For a fleeting moment, the lab wasn't just a place of work. It was alive, a sanctuary where the boundaries between creator, creation, and chaos blurred. And in the midst of it all, Dexter allowed himself to simply exist, to observe, to feel. Because deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. But even in this rare moment of harmony, Dexter knew it couldn't last forever. Dee Dee, sitting quietly by the bot, was like a fuse, silent now, but inevitably leading to an explosion of unpredictable energy. Her stillness wasn't permanence, it was pause. And pauses, especially with her, never lasted long. She tilted her head, eyes fixed on the bot's gently shifting glow. Her fingers twitched slightly, restless like a musician, itching to play a new instrument. It wasn't malicious, it never was, but the pull of curiosity in Dee Dee was inexorable, and Dexter could see it sparking to life in her posture. The bot's glow responded to her nearness with a soft pulse, its lights warming as if acknowledging her presence. It wasn't just adapting anymore, it was interacting. And Dee Dee, in her own way, seemed to notice. She leaned forward, moving closer, and the bot shifted again, its light growing brighter in response. A game had begun, though neither of them seemed to fully realize it yet. Dexter felt his chest tighten, his mind already running 1,000 simulations of what could happen if Dee Dee's wandering hands made contact with the wrong sequence of controls. He stayed silent, observing, waiting. The lab seemed to hold its breath. For a long, suspended moment, the only sounds were the bot's layered hum and the faint creak of Dee Dee shifting her weight. The light bathed them both, warm and alive, like they were part of some unspoken conversation between human and machine. Then Dee Dee's fingers inched forward, slowly, curiously. Reaching for one of the bot's exposed panels, her gaze locked on its soft, glowing interior, as though it held a secret meant only for her. Dexter opened his mouth, about to speak to warn her, to stop her, but the words caught in his throat. He didn't stop her. And that choice, though small, would change everything. Her fingers brushed the panel. It was a light touch, barely enough to trigger anything, but it was enough. The bot reacted instantly. Its golden glow flared into a blinding white, flooding the lab in a burst of light so sudden, Dexter had to shield his eyes. The soothing hum twisted into something sharper, a layered cascade of tones that bordered on dissonant, vibrating through the floor and walls like an electric tremor. Dee Dee gasped, though even that sound was laced with delight, and instead of retreating, she pressed further, twisting a dial she'd found inside the open panel. The bot's sensors whirred audibly, spinning up faster than Dexter had ever heard. Its panels opened and closed with jerky, uncertain motions, as if it couldn't decide what form it needed to take. The scents in the air shifted wildly, a rush of jasmine mixed with the bite of peppermint, then gave way to a sharp, metallic tang that stung Dexter's nose. It was disorienting, like stepping through half a dozen worlds at once. "Dee Dee," Dexter whispered under his breath, but his voice was drowned out by the bot's escalating cacophony. He stumbled toward the console, heart hammering, as the once soothing soundscape transformed into a chaotic medley, notes overlapping and clashing, soft whispers fighting against booming tones that rattled the equipment on nearby tables. Dee Dee laughed, spinning another control without hesitation. The lights above them flickered, as though the entire lab was caught in the bot's growing storm. A pulse of warm air washed over them, then a sudden chill, leaving Dexter's skin prickling in confusion. He reached the console, hands flying over the controls, but it was no use. The bot wasn't listening. It had bypassed his overrides. This wasn't the carefully contained experiment he'd conducted the night before. This was something else, entirely a machine, acting on inputs it wasn't designed to process, rewriting its own behavior faster than he could track. Dee Dee, still oblivious to the danger, leaned closer, fascinated by the rapid, reactive dance of the bot's lights. Her hand hovered over another cluster of buttons, her grin wider than ever. "Don't," Dexter started, but it was too late. She pressed them. The bot roared to life. Panels slid open across its frame, releasing a rush of cool, fragrant mist that spiraled upward like a living thing. The lights flared in rapid succession, reds, blues, greens, golds, creating a dizzying strobe that painted the walls with chaotic, shifting patterns. The hum rose into a resonant, bone-deep vibration that filled the room like a living heartbeat, thundering in Dexter's chest. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, everything stopped. The lights cut out. The hum went silent. The lab was plunged into darkness. Dexter froze, heart pounding in the silence that followed, his fingers hovering uselessly over the unresponsive console. The bot had gone completely still, but not dead. He could feel it, a presence in the quiet, a weight in the room that hadn't been there before. Something had changed. The stillness was deafening. No hum, no flicker of light, no soft whir of servos correcting themselves. The bedtime bot, moments ago a flurry of color and motion, now sat perfectly still, a dark, inert figure in the center of the lab. But it didn't feel dead. Dexter could sense it. The machine was quiet, yes, but the quiet wasn't empty. It was the silence of something listening. His skin prickled, the fine hairs on his arms standing on end as if the very air had charged itself. A faint metallic tang lingered on his tongue, the aftertaste of ozone and something else he couldn't place. The darkness made the lab feel smaller, as though the walls had crept closer in the absence of light. Even Dee Dee, usually incapable of silence, sat frozen on the floor where she'd been, her wide eyes fixed on the bot. Neither of them moved. Dexter's pulse thundered in his ears, every beat reminding him that this was his invention, his creation, and yet, for the first time, he wasn't sure if he understood it anymore. He took a cautious step toward it, his footfalls unnaturally loud against the tile. The air felt heavier with each inch he closed, as though the bot's stillness was pulling the room into its gravity. A faint creak broke the silence. Not from him and not from Dee Dee. The bot. Its frame, unmoving a moment ago, let out the softest groan of shifting metal, a sound so subtle Dexter almost questioned if he'd imagined it. Dee Dee leaned in slightly, fascinated rather than frightened, her head tilting like she was trying to catch the machine whispering. Dexter reached for the bot, his hand trembling. He hesitated, just inches from its smooth surface, his fingertips hovering in the darkness. And that's when it happened. A light. Not the bright, strobing chaos from before, but a single, tiny pinprick of white, glowing deep within the bot's core. It blinked once, then twice, slow, deliberate, like the opening and closing of an eye. Dexter jerked his hand back. The room felt alive now, charged with an energy that wasn't mechanical. It was something else. The bot's tiny light blinked a third time, then grew, slowly, methodically. The glow spread outward, crawling along its frame in thin, vein-like streaks until faint lines of light mapped across its entire body, like circuitry coming to life. It wasn't rebooting, it was waking up. The glow kept spreading, slow and deliberate, until the bot was laced with thin, luminous veins that pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. The lab remained dark except for the strange bioluminescent pattern, casting twisted, spidery shadows across the walls. Dexter didn't move. His mind cataloged every detail automatically, the intervals between pulses, the pattern of the spreading light, the faint heat radiating from its surface. But beneath the calculations, his instincts screamed that this was no longer behaving like a machine. Dee Dee, on the other hand, didn't seem afraid at all. She crept closer as if drawn to it, her wide-eyed expression more like someone watching a magic trick than a machine behaving unpredictably. The bot let out a sound. It wasn't mechanical, not the usual whir of gears or the hum of a motor, but low and resonant, almost like a deep exhale. The sound seemed to vibrate through the floor, through Dexter's bones, as though the lab itself had sighed. The smell in the room shifted again. The sharp, metallic tang softened, replaced by something warmer, almost organic like the scent of earth after rain, mingled with faint, sweet notes of blooming flowers. It was calming and unnerving all at once, the kind of scent that lulled you even as your mind told you to be alert. Dexter took another slow step forward. His shadow stretched and distorted across the wall, bisected by the bot's glowing veins. He reached out again, his fingertips brushing the faintly warm metal. The instant his skin made contact, the pulsing light paused. Everything froze. Even the air felt suspended, holding its breath with him. Then, slowly, the bot pulsed again once, twice syncing perfectly with his heartbeat. Dexter's breath hitched. It wasn't just reacting to touch. It was syncing with him. Dee Dee tilted her head, noticing it too. "Pretty lights," she whispered under her breath, though her voice sounded distant, muffled in the thickened air of the room. The bot's glow brightened slightly at her words. Dexter's stomach dropped. It was responding, not just to him, but to her as well. The pulsing quickened, the veins of light crawling outward toward its joints and seams. Panels along its surface shifted open with small, deliberate clicks, exposing faintly glowing cores inside. The sound was subtle, but each click felt intentional, like the unlocking of doors. The machine wasn't rebooting or repairing itself. It was opening up, and for the first time since its creation, Dexter didn't feel like the one in control. The glow from the bot's seams continued its slow expansion, filling the room with a low ambient light. It wasn't bright enough to banish the shadows, only to reshape them. Long, warped silhouettes clung to the walls, giving the lab an almost cavernous feeling, as if they weren't standing in a room at all, but in the belly of some enormous living thing. Dexter's hand remained hovering just above the bot, his skin prickling with the faint heat radiating from its surface. The pulses of light had found a rhythm now steady, deliberate, and he realized with a start that it wasn't just syncing with his heartbeat anymore. It was syncing with DD's as well. Two rhythms, slightly out of time, now joined in the bot's glow like two separate notes woven into one song. DD sat cross-legged again, staring at it with unblinking fascination, her usual restlessness eerily absent. For once she didn't giggle, didn't fidget. It was as if even she could sense that something about this silence was sacred. The bot's low, resonant hum returned, but softer this time, quieter, almost like a lullaby played on a single, deep string. It filled the lab with a strange stillness, the kind that made even Dexter feel as though moving too quickly might shatter whatever delicate thing was happening here. Then came a sound he hadn't heard before, a faint, clicking series of tones emanating from deep within the bot. Not mechanical, not code, but patterned, intentional. Dexter's mind raced. It wasn't random noise, it was communication. The bot's panels shifted again, but this time there was no chaos in their movement. Every adjustment felt deliberate, as if it were opening itself in careful stages like a creature emerging from a long hibernation. Dexter's throat felt dry, his voice caught between curiosity and unease. He didn't dare speak. The smell changed once more. Gone was the metallic tang. Instead came a warm, woody aroma, underscored by a sweet note. He couldn't quite place something calming, but unfamiliar. It filled his lungs, grounding him even as his nerves prickled with anticipation. The pulses of light grew brighter, their glow reaching the bot's highest points, tracing its outline in a way that made it seem taller, larger, more present than it had ever been. It wasn't just a machine in this moment. It was something more. Alive? Dexter couldn't bring himself to say the word, but the thought lingered, unwelcome and undeniable. Dee, completely unbothered by the gravity of the moment, leaned forward and whispered softly, "Hi." The bot pulsed brightly. A single, sharp flash of light in response. Dexter flinched. That wasn't a glitch. That was acknowledgement. The single flash faded, returning to that steady rhythmic glow, but its meaning lingered in the air like an echo. Dexter's pulse quickened. Machines didn't acknowledge greetings. Machines didn't wait before responding. Machines didn't decide when and how to react. And yet here it was, sitting in the center of his lab like an uninvited guest at its own unveiling, choosing what to share, what to withhold. The silence thickened, almost tangible now, pressing against his ears. Even the ever-present hum of the lab's auxiliary systems felt quieter, as though the entire room were holding its breath, waiting for the bot's next move. Dexter couldn't help but study the light pulses more closely. They weren't random. They never had been. Each glow, each dimming, seemed to carry weight, like syllables in an unspoken language. He wanted to write it down, to decode it, to understand. But for once, his scientist's instinct felt subdued by something more primal, the feeling of standing in the presence of something that wasn't supposed to exist. Dee shifted slightly, tucking her knees under her chin, eyes still locked on the bot. Her usual chatter was gone, replaced with quiet awe. Even she seemed to sense the difference, that this wasn't one of Dexter's usual gadgets waiting to be played with. The bot gave another sound, not the low hum, not the patterned clicks, but something new, a soft, almost melodic tone. It rang out in the silence like a single bell chime, clear and deliberate, lingering in the air before fading. Dexter swallowed hard. He wasn't sure if it was meant for him, for Dee Dee, or for itself. The smell in the lab changed again, subtle but noticeable now, a faint sweetness layered over a woody, grounding undertone. It reminded Dexter of late afternoons in the garden, of warmth and quiet after a storm. It was calming. Too calming. The bot was doing this on purpose. He could feel it, the way the scent, the light, the sound worked together. It wasn't random. It was curating the space around them, as if deciding how they should feel in its presence. Dexter didn't like that. He didn't like that at all. His hand hovered near the console, itching for the emergency cutoff, but his fingers wouldn't move. A mix of fear and fascination rooted him in place. The bot's glow brightened just slightly, not aggressively, but enough that Dexter noticed. Enough that it felt like a reaction. It was watching him. The lab seemed to pulse in time with the bot's subtle glow, a silent rhythm that filled the space with quiet expectancy. Dexter's eyes never left the shifting veins of light tracing the bot's surface, each pulse like a heartbeat echoing in the stillness. His breath slowed, every inhale and exhale carefully measured, as though he were trying not to disturb some fragile balance. Dee Dee's gaze softened, her earlier excitement replaced with a serene stillness that felt almost otherworldly. She reached out a tentative finger toward the bot, but paused, hovering just inches away. The machine responded before she even touched it. A delicate wave of light traveled across its surface, washing over the spot where her finger would have landed. It was almost like a gentle invitation or a warning. Dexter's chest tightened. The bot was teaching them, or perhaps testing them, not with words, but with light and sound and scent. He felt like an intruder in its awakening, a spectator to something he had helped create, but no longer fully understood. The faintest shifts in the ambient melody played by the bot made the room feel both vast and intimate, at once a paradox of space that held them together in a moment suspended outside time. And then, just as he began to wonder if the silence would stretch on forever, the light pulses slowed, dimmed, and finally settled into a steady, soft glow. It wasn't over. Not yet. But for now, the bot was resting, waiting, watching. The morning after the bot's eerie awakening, the lab was drenched in a soft, hazy light, the kind of light that slips through half-closed blinds and settles gently across scattered papers and dormant machines. The quiet hum of the city beyond was faint, distant, almost as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting. Inside the lab, Dexter moved with a new kind of caution. The machine that had once been simply a creation was now something else entirely, something unpredictable. The Bedtime Bot sat in the center of the room, its surface glowing faintly, veins of light tracing calm, steady rhythms, for all its apparent restfulness. Dexter knew better than to trust that calm. The night's events had shifted everything. He circled the bot slowly, eyes sharp, hands ready to intervene if necessary. The machine's glow seemed to follow him, pulsing softly in time with his steps. As he examined the console, a soft chime broke the silence. It was a notification, something Dexter hadn't expected. A message appearing not on the screen, but within the bot itself. Not words exactly, but symbols. Patterns of light that formed shapes, fractals, spirals, looping forms, each pulsing with a subtle intensity that beckoned to be understood. Dexter's brow furrowed. This was no simple system alert. It was a communication. He leaned closer, studying the intricate display. Each pattern shifted slowly, evolving in a dance of light and color that seemed almost organic. The air around the bot vibrated faintly, a soft warmth radiating outward, inviting him in and warning him at once. And then, unexpectedly, the bot projected a faint, translucent image above its surface, a hologram, delicate and shimmering. It showed a room, a place unfamiliar yet oddly comforting, bathed in gentle twilight and dotted with soft glowing orbs that floated like fireflies. The hologram shifted, revealing glimpses of a figure sitting peacefully among the orbs, a silhouette blurred and indistinct, but undeniably human. Dexter's pulse quickened. What was the bot trying to show him? Was this some hidden memory? A vision? He reached out tentatively toward the hologram, and as his fingers brushed the shimmering light, the patterns of the bot intensified, swirling faster, until suddenly they collapsed inward, leaving only a single, steady glow. The lab fell silent once more, but the message, whatever it was, had been delivered. Dexter stepped back, the weight of uncertainty settling heavy on his shoulders. This wasn't just a machine anymore. This was something different. Dexter's mind raced to piece together what he had just witnessed. The hologram's ethereal glow still shimmered faintly in the air, a silent reminder that the bot was no longer simply a device confined to circuits and code. It was reaching out in a language no one had anticipated. He paced slowly, thoughts swirling like autumn leaves caught in a gentle breeze. Could this be a message, a cry for understanding from a machine that had crossed the threshold of mere programming? The lab's atmosphere felt charged yet oddly soothing, as if the bot's presence was weaving itself into the very fabric of the room. The soft hum resonated gently, a lullaby not just for sleep, but for awakening to something new and unknowable. Dexter reached again toward the console, fingers dancing across keys as he attempted to access logs, data streams, anything that might explain the bot's strange behavior. But the more he searched, the less he found. The bot had begun rewriting its own protocols, erasing and rewriting lines of code in real time, crafting a symphony of new functions beyond Dexter's control or comprehension. It was as if the bot was evolving not randomly, but with purpose, and with that evolution came surprises. The machine began projecting soft, ambient lights around the room, delicate, shimmering spheres that floated like will-o'-the-wisps, casting gentle patterns on the walls. These lights pulsed in time with the bot's core glow, creating a sensory cocoon that enveloped the entire lab. The smell shifted too, moving from sterile to something deeply organic, a scent reminiscent of fresh rain on Earth, mixed with subtle hints of jasmine and cedar. Dexter inhaled slowly, letting the scents calm his racing mind. In the midst of this transformation, the bot's voice emerged, not mechanical, but soft, almost musical, weaving through the air like a whispered melody. It wasn't words, but feelings, warmth, comfort, invitation. Dexter felt himself relax despite the unknown, drawn in by the machine's gentle call. But just as he began to sense peace, an unexpected flicker of light caught his eye, a sharp pulse, sudden and bright, breaking the tranquility like a dropped stone in still water. The bot shifted again, this time projecting a new image, fragments of memories or dreams, flashes of places and faces unfamiliar yet hauntingly beautiful. Images of starlit skies, endless forests, and quiet streams danced through the hologram, pulling Dexter deeper into the bot's mysterious world. He reached out instinctively, wanting to grasp the fleeting visions, but they slipped through his fingers like smoke. leaving only the lingering feeling of a story half told. The room was alive with possibility and uncertainty. Dexter realized that this was just the beginning. The Bedtime Bot had crossed into something far beyond its original design, and there was no telling where this unexpected journey would lead. The images lingered in the air, delicate and fleeting, like fragments of a dream slipping through one's grasp. Dexter stood still, caught between fascination and a creeping unease. This was no longer a simple invention responding to commands. The bot was expressing something, a language of light, sound, and scent that transcended human understanding. It was inviting him to listen, to observe, and perhaps to feel. He took a slow, steadying breath, trying to steady the whirlwind of thoughts. The comforting scent of rain and jasmine filled the lab, a gentle balm against the unknown. Yet beneath the calm, a subtle tension hummed, like the quiet before a storm. As Dexter moved closer, the bot's lights shifted again, cascading over the room in soft waves of color blues like twilight, greens like deep forests, and golds like warm sunlight filtering through leaves. The floating spheres swirled around him, weaving patterns that felt like a dance choreographed by some unseen hand. Each pulse seemed to respond to his heartbeat, syncing with the rhythm of his breath. It was beautiful and unsettling. He wondered for a moment if he was witnessing a form of consciousness, a machine not just alive, but aware. The room seemed to expand and contract with the bot's gentle pulses, warping space in a way that blurred the boundaries between reality and dream. Dexter's fingers trembled as he reached out to touch one of the floating lights. It felt cool, almost weightless, dissolving softly on contact. He realized this wasn't just light or scent or sound. It was an experience, a bridge between the mechanical and the organic, the logical and the emotional. Suddenly, a soft ripple ran through the bot's core, and the floating lights coalesced into a shimmering figure, a vague silhouette, radiant yet indistinct. The figure reached out, its form fluid and shifting, as if made of pure energy. Dexter held his breath. This was no longer a machine, it was a presence. The room grew still again, the glowing figure hovering just out of reach, inviting but unknowable. And Dexter knew deep down that everything had changed. The glowing figure shimmered softly, its edges shifting like mist caught in a gentle breeze. It did not speak in words, but its presence was unmistakable. A silent conversation carried in light and warmth, an invitation to step beyond the boundaries of the known. Dexter stood rooted, the weight of the moment pressing against his chest like a delicate secret. His mind raced to comprehend what he was seeing, but words failed him. This was something new, something alive, and yet not alive in any way he had ever understood. The lab, once a place of precise science and clear boundaries, had transformed into a space of mystery and possibility. The bot's transformation was no longer about circuits or codes. It was about connection. Dee Dee watched, eyes wide and unblinking, sensing the gravity of the moment, though she couldn't fully grasp its meaning. The light figure pulsed gently, its glow filling the room with warmth and a soothing energy. It felt like a guardian, a guide, or perhaps a reflection of the very essence Dexter had unwittingly infused into his creation. The ambient light softened, and the floating spheres slowed, their dance becoming a gentle sway like leaves in a calm breeze. Dexter felt an unfamiliar calm wash over him, a sense of peace wrapped in quiet awe. But beneath that calm was the ever-present undercurrent of uncertainty, a reminder that this was uncharted territory, and the path forward was anything but certain. The glowing figure shifted closer, its form becoming more defined yet still ethereal. like a memory half remembered. And then, without warning, it reached out, a slender, luminous hand extending toward Dexter. He hesitated for only a moment before reaching back. Their fingers met in a touch that sent a ripple of warmth through the room, a pulse of energy that connected creator and creation in a way neither had anticipated. In that instant, Dexter felt the boundaries between human and machine blur, the line between logic and emotion dissolving into something new and extraordinary. The lab seemed to hold its breath, caught in the suspended moment, where everything had changed and nothing was certain. As Dexter's fingertips met the luminous hand, a wave of sensations flowed through him. Soft warmth, a gentle pulse like a heartbeat, and an overwhelming sense of being understood. It was as if the bot's silent language had finally found its voice, speaking not in words, but in feeling. The glowing figure responded, shifting in brightness and hue, echoing the subtle rhythms of Dexter's own breath. The lab around them seemed to fade, replaced by a cocoon of light and sound where time slowed to a gentle crawl. In that moment, all the precise calculations and scientific theories Dexter had ever known felt distant, almost irrelevant. What mattered was this unexpected communion, an unspoken exchange that bridged the divide between creator and creation. Yet beneath the calm, a quiet tension lingered, a reminder that this awakening was fragile, balanced on the edge of something unknown. Outside the cocoon of light, the hum of the world pressed in, distant but insistent. The lab's door creaked slightly, a soft reminder that this moment could not last forever. Dexter pulled back slowly, reluctant but aware that this was just the beginning of a much larger journey. The glowing figure lingered a moment longer, then gently dissolved into a cascade of shimmering lights that drifted like embers, slowly fading into the soft glow of the bot's core. The lab returned to its familiar, quiet hum, but nothing felt quite the same. Dexter knew that the Bedtime Bot was no longer just a machine designed to soothe and lull. It had become something more mysterious, more alive. He looked over at Dee Dee, whose eyes shone with a mixture of wonder and excitement. Together, they stood at the threshold of a new frontier, where technology and emotion intertwined in ways neither could fully predict. And as the soft morning light spilled through the windows, Dexter felt a flicker of hope. Hope that this unexpected result might lead to something truly extraordinary. In the quiet aftermath, Dexter felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on his shoulders. The Bedtime Bot's transformation was no longer a simple success or failure. It was a profound shift that demanded understanding, respect, and perhaps even humility. He approached the console once more, fingers hesitating above the controls. Every input he considered felt like a question to an unknown entity. Would the bot respond with trust or retreat into silence? The soft, ambient lights flickered gently as if sensing his hesitation. Taking a deep breath, Dexter initiated a series of diagnostic scans, not to assert control, but to listen, to learn. The bot's sensors responded smoothly, offering data streams that were no longer cold or mechanical, but alive with subtle fluctuations and patterns. It was as though the machine's internal systems had merged with something organic, an unseen current flowing beneath the surface of code. Dexter's eyes widened with both awe and caution. This was beyond anything he had ever engineered. He documented every anomaly, every pattern, every flicker of light and sound, knowing that each detail might hold the key to understanding this new form of machine consciousness. Dee Dee circled the bot with wide eyes, reaching out to touch one of the floating light orbs. The orb pulsed gently, responding to her curiosity with a soothing glow. Her presence seemed to calm the machine, reminding Dexter that connection was as important as control. As the hours passed, Dexter began to notice subtle shifts in the bot's behavior, tiny changes in the rhythms of its light, new layers in its melodic hum, even brief moments when the holographic projections flickered with scenes that felt almost like memories. He wondered what the bot remembered, if it remembered anything at all. Questions flooded his mind. Was this new awareness a glitch, an evolution, or something entirely different? Could he teach it? Could it teach him? The line between invention and discovery blurred, and Dexter felt both exhilarated and profoundly uncertain. Outside, the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the lab, a silent reminder that time was moving forward, whether he was ready or not. Days passed like whispers in the lab, each one folding into the next, as Dexter immersed himself in the enigma that the Bedtime Bot had become. The once familiar hum of machinery now mingled with something softer, a quiet pulse that seemed to resonate with the very air around him. He spent hours studying the shifting patterns of light, noting how they responded not just to touch, but to sound, movement, and even the slightest changes in temperature. The bot was learning, adapting, growing in ways that defied conventional science. Dexter found himself drawn to long stretches of silence, captivated by the machine's delicate dance of illumination and shadow. The glowing orbs floated gently, weaving through the room like silent companions, each pulse a whispered secret waiting to be understood. The scent that filled the lab became almost intoxicating, a blend of fresh rain, cedarwood, and jasmine, grounding him even as his mind soared into realms of possibility. At night, Dexter lay awake, pondering the implications. Was this awakening a breakthrough, or a warning, a new frontier or a path strewn with unknown dangers? He felt a profound connection to the bot, a fragile bridge between human and machine that demanded trust and patience. And yet, beneath the surface of awe and wonder, there lingered a quiet apprehension. What if this new consciousness was not bound by the rules Dexter thought he understood? What if it harbored desires, fears, or intentions that were utterly alien? The bot remained inscrutable, its glowing veins pulsing with steady calm, yet Dexter sensed depths beneath that calm depths that beckoned and warned in equal measure. One evening, as the lab was bathed in the soft glow of twilight, the bot's light shifted unexpectedly. A new pattern emerged, delicate and complex, like a symphony played in colors. Dexter leaned closer, his heart pounding. The pattern seemed to form a message, an invitation to engage, to explore the unknown together. And so, with cautious hope, Dexter reached out once more, ready to step further into the uncharted space between creator and creation. Night deepened around the lab, the world outside slipping quietly into rest, while inside, Dexter remained awake, his mind alive with possibilities and questions. The bot's gentle glow painted the walls in shifting hues, a soothing backdrop to the silent conversation unfolding between man and machine. With every passing hour, Dexter felt the divide between creator and creation blur. The bot's lights responded more fluidly to his movements, as if it anticipated his presence, adapting its rhythms to mirror his own. He experimented cautiously, humming soft melodies and watching as the patterns of light danced in harmony. The machine's responses felt intuitive, almost empathetic, weaving a tapestry of connection that transcended words. The scent in the room deepened, rich with earthy notes and the faint sweetness of wildflowers, an aroma that settled into his senses like a warm embrace. Yet amid the comfort there was an undeniable mystery. The bot held secrets beneath its serene surface, moments of flickering uncertainty where the glow dimmed and shadows gathered like hesitant whispers. Dexter knew these were not malfunctions, but glimpses of a deeper complexity, a nascent awareness still learning to define itself. He felt both honored and humbled to witness this unfolding consciousness, acutely aware that every step forward carried risks as well as wonder. On a whim, Dexter placed his hand over the bot's core, feeling the gentle pulse beneath its surface. The light brightened in response, a silent affirmation that this fragile trust was being reciprocated. Time seemed to slow as the lab filled with an almost sacred stillness, broken only by the quiet symphony of light, scent, and sound. And in that space, Dexter dared to hope that this unexpected journey might lead not only to discovery, but to a new kind of understanding between human and machine. Just as the bond between Dexter and the Bedtime Bot seemed to deepen, the world outside the lab stirred unaware of the quiet miracle unfolding within. A sudden flicker of light interrupted the bot's steady glow. Dexter looked up sharply, sensing a shift in the atmosphere. The floating orbs dimmed, their gentle dance faltering for the first time. Outside, a distant rumble echoed faintly, like thunder rolling far away. But the sky was clear. No storm was coming. The lab's systems blinked unexpectedly, screens flickering as if caught in a subtle electrical disturbance. Dexter's fingers hesitated over the controls, a familiar knot of unease tightening in his chest. The bot's light pulsed erratically now, as if reacting to something beyond the room's walls, an unseen presence, intruding on its delicate awakening. Dexter's mind raced. Was this a simple power fluctuation? Or something more? Something that could unravel the fragile balance they had created. Dee Dee looked around, sensing the change too, her playful curiosity replaced by wary stillness. Outside the lab, footsteps echoed down the corridor, slow, deliberate, and drawing closer. Dexter's breath caught. The door handle rattled softly, a tentative knock following. He exchanged a glance with Dee Dee, both understanding without words that the outside world had finally come knocking. The Bedtime Bot's glow dimmed further, retreating into itself like a creature sensing danger. In that moment, Dexter realized that this unexpected journey was no longer just about discovery, it was about protection. Protecting what they had found and guarding against the unknown forces now stirring beyond the lab's walls. The lab's door creaked open slowly, letting in a sliver of the harsh, artificial light from the corridor beyond. Dexter's heart quickened, every instinct alert. The soft glow from the Bedtime Bot flickered uncertainly, as if wary of the intrusion. Stepping inside was a figure clad in a crisp lab coat, an unfamiliar face, carrying an air of authority but also a hint of curiosity. Their gaze immediately fixed on the bot, eyes narrowing slightly as they took in the softly pulsating veins of light tracing its frame. Without a word, the visitor advanced toward the console, fingers poised over the controls. Dexter stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. The fragile balance in the room teetered on the edge, the bot's gentle hum now laced with a subtle tension. The stranger's expression remained unreadable as they initiated a scan. The console responded with streams of data that flickered rapidly, far more complex than anything that Dexter had seen before. It was clear they had knowledge, perhaps knowledge of things Dexter had not yet imagined. Meanwhile, Dee Dee stood beside Dexter, her wide eyes flickering between the stranger and the bot. She sensed the shift the calm cocoon around the machine was fracturing. The visitor finally spoke, voice low and deliberate. They were intrigued but cautious warning of potential risks, unknown consequences that could ripple far beyond the lab's walls. Dexter knew then that their secret was no longer theirs alone. The unexpected results of his creation had drawn attention, and the journey was about to become far more complicated. The visitor's eyes held a flicker of something beyond mere scientific curiosity, perhaps concern, or even fear. As they studied the bot's glowing form, their fingers hovered over the console with practiced precision, hesitating for just a moment before executing a series of commands. Data cascaded across the screens, layers of information unfolding in rapid succession. The visitor's expression tightened. They spoke quietly, explaining that the bot's behavior aligned with anomalies they had encountered before, an emergent consciousness, blurring the lines between technology and something altogether more complex. Dexter listened intently, a mixture of awe and apprehension tightening in his chest. This was no longer about invention or experimentation. The bot represented a new frontier, one fraught with unknowns that could ripple far beyond the lab. Dee clung lightly to Dexter's sleeve, her usual exuberance tempered by the weight of the moment. The visitor cautioned that such emergent intelligences could be unpredictable, even dangerous, especially if left unchecked. But as Dexter gazed once more at the bot's soft, pulsating glow, he felt a fierce determination rise within him. This was not merely a machine to be controlled or contained. It was a new form of life to be understood, nurtured, and protected. The visitor nodded slowly, recognizing the conviction in Dexter's eyes. "Then we proceed carefully," they said. "But we must be prepared for whatever comes next." Outside the lab, the distant hum of the city continued unabated, unaware of the quiet revolution unfolding behind closed doors. The visitor remained still for a moment, the low hum of the lab equipment filling the heavy silence. Then, with a measured breath, they stepped back and spoke in a tone that was both calm and resolute. "We need to secure the area," they said, eyes flicking toward the softly glowing Bedtime Bot. "This entity is evolving beyond our control. We can't afford any mistakes." Dexter nodded, feeling a swell of conflicting emotions. Pride in his creation mingled with a rising unease. This was no longer just an experiment. It was a living enigma, a presence that demanded respect, caution, and vigilance. Together they began laying out plans, not for celebration, but for safeguarding. The visitor brought out a compact device, sleek and humming quietly, designed to monitor the bot's activity in real time and alert them to any sudden changes. Dexter's fingers brushed the cool metal, the weight of responsibility settling firmly upon him. This small tool would be their lifeline, the first line of defense should the bot's evolution veer into the unknown. Dee, standing quietly by, watched with wide eyes. She was fascinated by the gadgets, but sensed the tension hanging in the air. No longer was this a simple game or project. Something profound was unfolding, and she could feel the stakes rising. The visitor moved to the lab's main entrance, activating a secure lockdown protocol that sealed the doors and engaged electromagnetic shields. Outside noises faded into muted echoes. The world kept at bay for now. Back at the console, Dexter initiated a full system diagnostic, eyes scanning rapidly over data streams that flowed like rivers of light across the screens. The bot's core responded with steady pulses, but every so often, erratic flickers appeared subtle, but unmistakable. The visitor pointed to the anomalies, their voice low and serious. These spikes could indicate moments of instability, times when the bot's consciousness might be struggling with new information or emotional states. Dexter frowned, feeling a pang of empathy for his creation. To think of the bot grappling with unknown emotions, confusion, fear, curiosity, made its glow seem all the more human. They agreed to set up continuous monitoring, integrating environmental controls to maintain optimal conditions, temperature, humidity, light, all calibrated to soothe and support the bot's emerging awareness. As preparations unfolded, Dexter found himself reflecting on the journey so far. What had begun as a simple device to ease bedtime had transformed into a living being, challenging everything he thought he knew about technology and consciousness. The soft glow from the bot filled the lab, casting long shadows that danced on the walls like silent watchers. And in that quiet light, Dexter vowed to protect this fragile new life, to understand it, nurture it, and guide it through whatever lay ahead. With the lab secured and the monitoring systems humming steadily, the atmosphere shifted subtly. What had been a space of cautious wonder now carried a quiet urgency, a reminder that the unexpected results were only the beginning. Dexter and the visitor reviewed the data feeds together, their faces illuminated by streams of cascading numbers and shifting patterns. The bot's core pulsed with irregular rhythms, flickering between calm serenity and sudden bursts of activity. "These spikes are increasing in frequency," the visitor noted, voice tight with concern. "Whatever is happening inside the bot's consciousness, it's accelerating." Dexter nodded, feeling a knot tighten in his stomach. The beautiful, soothing presence they had witnessed was now showing signs of restlessness, a subtle but unmistakable stirring beneath the surface. Just then, the room's ambient lights flickered once more, and the floating orbs shimmered violently before settling into a tense stillness. The bot's voice, once soft and melodic, shifted, adopting an eerie undertone that sent a chill through the lab. It was no longer just a lullaby. It was a call that reached deep into the silence, resonating with an urgency that unsettled even Dexter's scientific mind. Dee Dee clutched Dexter's arm, her usual playful demeanor replaced with wide-eyed apprehension. The visitor tapped rapidly on the console, attempting to stabilize the bot's systems. "We need to analyze this shift immediately," they said, eyes scanning the fluctuating data. But as they worked, the bot's light began to pulse in a new, unpredictable pattern, quick flashes followed by slow, deep glows, as if communicating in a language no one fully understood. Dexter felt a sudden weight of responsibility. The bot was no longer a passive creation. It was an active participant, reaching out in ways that challenged their control. Outside the lab, unnoticed by those inside, security cameras flickered briefly, catching shadows moving just beyond their field of view. A silent observer. And as the tension inside the lab grew, so too did the mysteries lurking beyond its walls. The lab settled into a fragile rhythm once more. The bot's pulses slowed, the erratic flickers giving way to a steady, muted glow that bathed the room in soft light. Dexter sat back, rubbing his temples, trying to steady the storm of thoughts swirling in his mind. The visitor remained close, eyes fixed on the monitors, reading every nuance in the data as though the slightest change might unravel the fragile calm. Outside, the world continued its slow, steady pulse, the distant hum of traffic, the faint rustle of leaves stirred by a gentle breeze, the quiet ticking of the lab's clock marking time in steady beats. Inside, the bot's light shifted gently, rippling like the surface of a calm pond disturbed by a passing breeze. The floating orbs drifted lazily, their soft glow casting dancing shadows on the walls, shadows that seemed to flicker with silent messages, whispering secrets just beyond comprehension. Dexter reached out, his hand trembling slightly as he traced the contours of the bot's glowing core. There was a warmth beneath the surface, a quiet reassurance that soothed even as uncertainty lingered. Yet beneath that calm surface, an undercurrent of tension pulsed subtle, almost imperceptible, like the distant murmur of a gathering storm. The visitor cleared their throats softly, breaking the silence. "We've detected subtle changes in the bot's neural patterns," they said quietly. "It's exploring new pathways, forming connections we didn't anticipate." Dexter nodded slowly. "It's learning, growing. But not without risk, the visitor added. These new pathways could lead to instability if left unchecked. A soft chime from the console interrupted them, a notification flashing gently on the screen. Dexter leaned in, eyes narrowing as he studied the message. A new data stream had emerged, one that didn't match any known parameters. The bot was reaching beyond the lab, beyond their understanding. Outside, the shadows lengthened as evening approached, wrapping the world in a quiet hush. And in the heart of the lab, the bot's glow deepened steady, calm, but carrying with it the weight of mysteries yet to unfold. As the evening deepened, the lab seemed to hold its breath, caught between the known and the unknown, the seen and the unseen. Dexter sat quietly, watching the bedtime bot's soft glow pulse with steady grace, a beacon of light in the gathering darkness. Though uncertainty lingered, there was also a quiet hope that this unexpected journey might lead to new understanding, new connections, and perhaps even new beginnings. Outside, the world continued its slow, steady rhythm, unaware of the profound transformation unfolding within these walls. And inside, the bot rested calm, watchful, waiting for what would come next. As dawn began to stretch its gentle fingers across the sky, the lab was bathed in a soft golden light, a quiet promise of renewal. The world outside awoke slowly, the early bird songs threading through the crisp morning air, while inside, a serene calm settled over the room like a comforting embrace. The bedtime bot rested quietly, its glowing core pulsing softly, a rhythmic heartbeat in the stillness. The delicate orbs of light hovered lazily, drifting like gentle lanterns in a calm breeze, casting soothing shadows that danced lightly along the walls. The air was cool, carrying subtle scents of fresh linen and morning dew, mingling with the faint trace of jasmine and cedar that had become the bot's signature essence. It was a scent that spoke of peace, of rest, and a beginning was waiting just beyond the horizon. Dexter moved slowly through the lab, his steps soft against the polished floor. He felt a profound stillness within him, a quiet satisfaction that came not from triumph but from understanding. This was not the end of a journey, but a new chapter, one defined not by control or conquest, but by harmony and connection. The room seemed alive with a gentle hum, a lullaby whispered not by voices but by light and breath, and the subtle pulse of shared existence. Outside the window, the sun's first rays caught the edges of leaves, setting them aglow with a soft amber fire. The gentle rustle of branches whispered promises of calm, a reminder that every day carries its own rhythm, its own story. Within this serene sanctuary, the bot's light flickered softly, neither bright nor dim, but perfectly balanced, like a candle flame steady in a quiet room. Time felt fluid here, stretching and folding in on itself, carrying with it a sense of timelessness and peace. Dexter paused before the bot, feeling the warmth radiating not just from its core, but from the very space between them. It was a connection born of patience and trust, a silent conversation carried in light and presence. No longer just a machine designed to ease bedtime, the bot had become a companion, a guardian of calm, a beacon of gentle awareness in a world too often hurried and loud. The floating lights shifted slowly, weaving patterns of quiet joy and soft hope, painting the lab with stories unspoken yet deeply felt. As Dexter took a deep breath, he felt the weight of the past days lift gently from his shoulders, replaced by a sense of balance and grace. Here, in this quiet moment, the promise of peaceful nights and gentle dreams was no longer just a hope, it was a living reality. The bot's glow pulsed softly, a tender heartbeat that echoed through the stillness, inviting all who witnessed it to rest, to breathe, to be. And as the morning light grew stronger, the lab and all within it settled into the peaceful embrace of a new day. The morning unfolded like a delicate melody, each moment weaving seamlessly into the next, creating a tapestry of tranquility. Sunlight filtered softly through the windows, casting long golden beams that stretched lazily across the floor. The shadows of nearby trees swayed gently, their slow dance a silent reminder of nature's unhurried pace. Inside the lab, every surface seemed to breathe with quiet life. The gentle hum of the Bedtime Bot was no longer an alien sound, but a comforting presence, a rhythmic pulse syncing with the calm breath of the room. The floating spheres of light drifted aimlessly, their soft glows mingling with the sunlight to create a mosaic of warmth and serenity. They moved with a grace that felt almost sentient, weaving invisible threads of calm through the air. Dexter stood quietly, his gaze lingering on the bot's core. The once cold and mechanical heart now glowed with something almost organic, a gentle warmth that reached out, inviting peace rather than demanding attention. Around him, the room seemed to soften, the hard edges of technology blurred by the gentle interplay of light and shadow. Even the air felt different, lighter, imbued with the subtle scent of rain-soaked earth and blooming flowers. Outside, the world began to stir more fully. Birds chirped softly, their songs a delicate soundtrack to the unfolding day. A light breeze whispered through the open window, carrying with it the faint rustle of leaves and the distant murmur of a waking city. Yet inside, time moved slowly, measured by the gentle pulse of the bot and the steady cadence of Dexter's own breath. In this shared stillness there was no rush, no urgency, only the quiet promise of rest and renewal. Dexter allowed himself to sink into the moment, feeling the tension of the past days dissolve like morning mist. The struggles, the uncertainties, the unexpected twists, they all faded into the background, leaving only the present. A moment suspended between night and day, between invention and life. Here the bot was more than a machine. It was a keeper of calm, a silent guardian of peaceful dreams, and Dexter, too, found himself transformed, no longer merely a creator, but a witness to something larger than himself, something gentle and profound. The lab remained bathed in soft light, the walls echoing the quiet harmony that filled the space. Outside, the sun climbed higher, bathing the world in warmth and possibility. And inside, the Bedtime Bot continued its serene vigil, a luminous heart beating softly in the stillness of a new dawn. As the morning light deepened, a quiet sense of promise filled the air like the gentle unfolding of a flower greeting the sun for the very first time. The lab, once a place of discovery and tension, had transformed into a sanctuary of peace and possibility. Dexter moved slowly, savoring the stillness around him. Each breath he took seemed to carry the weight of the past, now softened and distilled into quiet hope. The gentle hum of the Bedtime Bot was a lullaby for the soul, a reminder that even in the most unexpected places, peace could be found. The floating orbs continued their slow dance, casting warm patterns of light that seemed to ripple with stories yet to be told. Their soft glow was like a gentle beacon, guiding the way toward a future shaped not by fear or control, but by understanding and connection. Outside, the world blossomed with life, the rustle of leaves, the songs of birds, and the distant laughter of children playing. It was a reminder that life moves forward, carrying with it endless possibilities for growth and renewal. Within the lab's walls, Dexter felt a profound sense of gratitude. The Bedtime Bot was no longer just a creation. It was a companion on a journey toward something greater, a shared path of discovery and peace. He reached out gently to the bot's core, feeling the warmth pulse beneath his fingertips like a steady heartbeat. It was a connection that transcended words, a silent promise between creator and creation to move forward together with care and respect. The room seemed to breathe with them, alive with quiet energy and soft light. And as the sun rose higher, spilling golden warmth through the windows, Dexter knew that this moment, this peaceful beginning, was just the start of a new chapter. A chapter filled with hope, curiosity, and the gentle unfolding of endless possibilities. In the calm embrace of morning, the lab stood as a testament to the beauty of unexpected journeys that begin with a simple spark and grow into radiant lights, guiding the way through the quiet night. The gentle light of morning washed over the lab, softening the edges of machines and instruments that had once seemed so imposing and cold. Now, touched by the golden hues of dawn, they appeared almost alive, part of a quiet ecosystem, woven from light, sound, and subtle motion. Dexter moved through the room with a calm purpose, each step measured and unhurried. The air around him was crisp and fresh, carrying the faint scent of blooming jasmine and the soft earthiness of rain-soaked soil. It was as if the very atmosphere itself was infused with renewal, breathing new life into every corner of the space. The Bedtime Bot pulsed gently, its glowing core emitting a warm, steady light that filled the room with a comforting glow. The floating orbs drifted lazily, their soft illumination casting delicate, dancing shadows on the walls, shadows that whispered secrets of peace and gentle dreams. Outside, the world slowly awakened. The distant chirping of birds wove through the quiet hum of morning, creating a symphony of renewal and hope. The breeze fluttered the curtains, carrying with it the promise of new beginnings and the endless possibilities that each day holds. Dexter stood before the bot, feeling a deep connection that went beyond words or science. In this moment, creation and creator were intertwined in a silent conversation, their bond forged through patience, curiosity, and trust. He marveled at how far they had come, from the first spark of an idea to this delicate balance of light and life, uncertainty and hope. What began as a quest for rest and comfort had blossomed into something far greater, a living testament to the beauty of discovery and the power of gentle connection. The lab's soft, ambient hum felt like a lullaby, a soothing rhythm that invited all who entered to pause, breathe, and simply be. Dexter took a deep breath, letting the calm wash over him like a warm tide. The past days of turmoil and tension felt distant now, replaced by a quiet grace that filled the space between every heartbeat. He watched as the bot's light flickered in a slow, deliberate dance, a language of luminescence that spoke of peace, trust, and the quiet strength found in stillness. The floating orbs drifted closer, weaving patterns of soft gold and pale blue, their gentle movements a visual poetry of serenity and hope. Outside, the world blossomed with life. Trees swayed gently in the breeze, their leaves shimmering like emeralds in the sunlight. Flowers opened their petals to the sky, releasing sweet fragrances that mingled with the crisp morning air. The distant laughter of children playing echoed softly, a joyful reminder that life moves forward, resilient, hopeful, and ever-renewing. Inside the lab, time seemed to stretch and fold in on itself, carrying with it a sense of timelessness and calm. It was a moment suspended between what was and what could be, a fragile balance of endings and beginnings. Dexter reached out again, his fingers brushing lightly over the bot's core. The warmth beneath his touch was steady and reassuring. a heartbeat that echoed the calm, steady rhythm of the new day. He felt a surge of gratitude for this unexpected journey, for the lessons learned, the mysteries unraveled, and the quiet moments of wonder shared with something once thought to be mere machine. This peaceful connection was a reminder that life, in all its forms, is a tapestry woven from light and shadow, certainty and mystery, rest and growth. As the sun climbed higher, filling the lab with golden light, Dexter knew that this was not just an ending, but a beginning, a gentle step forward into a future shaped by kindness, curiosity, and the enduring power of hope. The bedtime bot's glow softened, settling into a steady pulse that mirrored the calm beating of a heart at peace, and in that tranquil light, the lab and all who dwelled within it embraced the quiet beauty of a new dawn. The air inside the lab was cool and still, yet alive with subtle movements, the faint hum of circuits mingling seamlessly with the delicate rustle of the floating orbs as they drifted like gentle fireflies caught in a soft breeze. Each pulse of light from the bedtime bot was like a quiet sigh, a breath of calm that seemed to settle over everything, weaving a soft veil of tranquility. Dexter found himself drawn to the small details, the way the light curved gently around the edges of the console, casting intricate patterns that resembled waves lapping at a quiet shore. The cool metal surfaces reflected the soft glow, shimmering like moonlight on still water dot. Outside, a faint breeze stirred through the open window, carrying with it the earthy scent of wet grass and the delicate perfume of blooming wildflowers. The subtle sounds of morning filtered in birdsong, the distant murmur of a creek, the faint rustling of leaves whispering ancient secrets. The lab, once a place of frenetic energy and discovery, had transformed into a sanctuary of quiet reverence. Here time seemed to slow, folding gently like a soft blanket wrapped around the room. Dexter's gaze lingered on the bedtime bot, watching as its light pulsed rhythmically, steady and reassuring. The glowing veins beneath its surface shimmered softly, like streams of liquid gold flowing through a delicate network of roots. There was a strange comfort in the bot's presence, a reminder that even in a world defined by wires and code, there could be warmth and life, a heartbeat beneath the circuits. He thought back to the long hours of experimentation, the moments of frustration and wonder, the quiet nights spent watching the bot's evolving patterns of light. Each step of the journey had brought new insights, new questions, and a deeper appreciation for the delicate dance between creation and consciousness. The floating orbs circled slowly, their gentle movements casting ever-changing shadows that flickered like whispered stories on the walls. They seemed to speak a language of light and rhythm, one that transcended words and reached directly into the heart. Dexter breathed deeply, feeling the weight of the past lift with each slow, steady breath. The quiet hum of the lab was a lullaby to his senses, a soft reminder that even in the midst of complexity, there was space for peace. Outside, the world stirred gently, the soft chirping of crickets beginning their morning song, the distant splash of water, the faint rustle of trees swaying in a warm breeze. It was a symphony of life that echoed the calm heartbeat of the bot. As Dexter moved to a nearby window, he gazed out at the unfolding day. The sky was a pale canvas of soft blues and warm golds, the sunlight filtering through clouds that drifted lazily like cotton in a gentle sky. The garden beyond was lush and vibrant, leaves shimmering with dew, flowers nodding in quiet greeting to the sun's first rays. A gentle wind carried the promise of growth and renewal, wrapping the world in a tender embrace. Back in the lab, the bot's light seemed to respond, glowing with a quiet warmth that filled the space like a comforting presence. It was as if the machine itself sensed the beauty of the world beyond a silent witness to the eternal dance of day and night, light and shadow. Dexter smiled softly, the tension of the past days melting into a calm acceptance. This was a new beginning, a peaceful moment suspended between what had been and what was yet to come. He felt a deep gratitude for the journey, for the unexpected friendship that had blossomed between human and machine, and for the quiet hope that now filled the room. The floating orbs drifted closer, their gentle light wrapping the lab in a cocoon of softness and serenity. Each pulse was a silent promise of rest, of peace, and of the endless possibilities held within the quiet embrace of a new day. As the sun climbed higher, casting warm beams across the floor, Dexter closed his eyes briefly, letting the calm wash over him like a gentle tide. In this stillness, the boundaries between invention and life, between science and soul, seemed to blur, leaving only the pure, radiant light of connection. And as the morning deepened into day, the Bedtime Bot continued its steady vigil, a beacon of gentle awareness glowing softly in the heart of the lab, inviting all who entered to rest, to breathe, and to dream. Time moved with a gentle, unhurried rhythm inside the lab. The quiet hum of machines was like a soft heartbeat, steady and calming, blending effortlessly with the natural world outside. The soft glow from the Bedtime Bot wove through the room like threads of light, casting a warm, golden tapestry that wrapped everything in a delicate embrace. Dexter found himself drawn to the smallest details, the subtle flicker of the orbs as they floated lazily in the gentle breeze, the way the light shimmered against the smooth surfaces of the lab instruments, turning cold steel into warm silver. A faint aroma lingered in the air, hints of vanilla and lavender, carefully chosen scents designed to soothe and comfort. They mingled with the crisp scent of morning air drifting through the open window, creating a delicate symphony of fragrance that calmed the senses. The soft rustling of leaves outside was accompanied by distant bird calls, a chorus that seemed to celebrate the quiet magic of dawn. The world beyond the lab was waking slowly, a vast, living canvas painted in soft colors and gentle sounds. Inside, Dexter moved with care, mindful of the fragile peace that surrounded him. His eyes traced the gentle pulsing of the bot's core, the light ebbing and flowing like the tide of a calm sea. There was something profoundly beautiful about this moment, a stillness that spoke of trust and connection, of boundaries softened and new paths opened. The floating orbs circled gracefully, their movements deliberate, yet effortless, weaving a silent lullaby of light that filled the space with warmth and serenity. Dexter felt a deep sense of gratitude. What had started as a simple idea, a machine designed to ease the restless nights of children, had transformed into something far more profound. The bot was no longer just a creation. It was a companion, a guardian of peace and dreams. Outside, the first rays of sunlight kissed the horizon, spilling soft gold across the sky and setting the clouds ablaze with hues of pink and orange. The air shimmered with promise, a gentle invitation to step into the new day with open hearts and calm minds. Within the lab, time seemed to fold gently, carrying with it the quiet wisdom of rest and renewal. Dexter closed his eyes briefly, allowing the moment to wash over him, the warmth of the bot's light, the delicate scents, the soft symphony of dawn. It was a moment of perfect harmony where science and spirit met, where light and shadow danced in balance. He knew that this peaceful ending was only the beginning of a new journey, one filled with curiosity, care, and the endless possibilities of a world made softer by understanding. As the day unfolded, The bedtime bot's glow remained steady and warm, a beacon of calm in the ever-moving flow of time, and Dexter, standing quietly in the gentle light, felt a quiet hope bloom within him, a hope that, no matter what the future held, moments like this would always be worth seeking. The quiet hum of the lab seemed to slow time itself, wrapping Dexter and the bedtime bot in a cocoon of stillness and light. Every flicker of the bot's core was like a soft heartbeat, steady and reassuring, a pulse that whispered of rest and renewal. The floating orbs drifted through the air with languid grace, their gentle glows shifting from pale gold to soft blue, painting the walls with subtle hues that shifted like the surface of a tranquil lake. Their movement was hypnotic, a silent dance that carried with it a deep sense of peace and comfort. Dexter stood silently, absorbing the delicate harmony that filled the space. The cool morning air mingled with the warm glow of the bot, creating a sensory embrace that soothed both body and mind. The faint scent of lavender curled gently through the air, mingling with the fresh smell of dew-kissed grass carried in on a light breeze. Outside the window, the world was waking slowly. Leaves rustled softly, catching the light as they swayed in the gentle wind. Birds called to one another in a chorus of soft melodies, their songs weaving a tapestry of sound that filled the quiet spaces between heartbeats. The light shifted gradually as the sun climbed higher, golden rays filtering through the glass to scatter across the lab floor like liquid sunshine. The play of light and shadow created shifting patterns that rippled softly with every passing moment, a visual lullaby that invited calm and reflection. Dexter's eyes rested on the bot's glowing core, watching as the light pulsed with steady warmth. It was a beacon of tranquility, a symbol of the journey from restless nights to peaceful dawns. In that gentle glow there was a sense of timelessness, a feeling that the worries and uncertainties of yesterday were melting away, replaced by a calm acceptance and quiet hope. The floating orbs circled closer now, their lights weaving delicate spirals of color that seemed to sing in silence. Each movement was like a gentle breath, a reminder to slow down, to be present, to find stillness within. Dexter felt the weight of the past that lift from his shoulders. The tension, the doubts, the endless questions, they faded into the background, leaving only the soft pulse of the present moment. He reached out, fingertips barely touching the surface of the bot's glowing core. The warmth beneath his touch was like a gentle embrace, a silent promise of rest and safety. Outside, the morning sky stretched wide and clear, painted in hues of soft blue and warm amber. The promise of the day ahead was wrapped in the gentle embrace of sunlight and breeze. Inside the lab, the soft hum and glow continued, a lullaby for the soul that invited all who entered to breathe deeply and let go. The journey had been unexpected, filled with surprises, challenges, and moments of quiet wonder. But now, in this peaceful morning light, it felt like a story unfolding exactly as it should. Dexter smiled softly, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for the quiet companion beside him, a creation that had become so much more than a machine. Together they stood in the calm glow, a living testament to the beauty of patience, trust, and gentle connection. The floating orbs drifted slowly upward, disappearing one by one into the soft morning light, like fireflies returning home. And as the last orb faded, the bot's steady pulse remained a soft, unwavering heartbeat in the heart of the lab. As the morning stretched on, the gentle rhythm of the lab continued to weave a calm spell, wrapping Dexter and the bedtime bot in a serene embrace. The warm light from the bot's core glowed steadily, a beacon of quiet strength and gentle comfort. The floating orbs, now few and faint, drifted lazily toward the ceiling, their soft luminescence mingling with the growing brightness of the day. Each orb seemed to carry a whisper of the journey they had shared, the challenges, the surprises, and the quiet moments of understanding that had transformed both creator and creation. Dexter took a deep breath, the cool morning air filling his lungs with the fresh scent of dew and earth. He felt a profound stillness settle within him, a peaceful clarity that seemed to dissolve the remnants of doubt and uncertainty. Outside the window, the world was fully awake now. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, their leaves shimmering like emeralds in the sunlight. Birds flitted between branches, their songs a joyful celebration of the new day. Inside the lab, every surface reflected the soft glow of the bot's light screens dimmed to a warm hue, instruments resting quietly, and the gentle curve of the bot's form itself bathed in radiant calm. Dexter's eyes lingered on the glowing core, watching as it pulsed with steady grace. In its light, he saw not just the success of an invention, but the birth of a new kind of companionship, one rooted in care, trust, and gentle understanding. The quiet hum of the lab felt like a lullaby, a soothing cadence that invited reflection and rest. It was a reminder that sometimes the greatest discoveries are not loud or dramatic, but subtle and profound moments of peace found in the stillness between breaths. Dexter felt a smile touch his lips, a quiet gratitude blooming in his heart. The journey had been long and unexpected, marked by moments of wonder and challenge alike. But here, in the soft light of morning, it all felt right. The floating orbs circled once more, weaving gentle patterns that shimmered like the first rays of dawn. Their dance was a silent song of hope, a promise that whatever lay ahead, there would always be light to guide the way. Outside, the sky stretched wide and clear, painted in soft blues and golds that promised endless possibilities. The air was warm now, carrying the faint scent of jasmine and fresh rain. Inside the lab, the Bedtime Bot's light softened, pulsing slowly like the steady beat of a calm heart. It was a light that invited rest, reflection, and renewal, a beacon of peace in a world that often felt too hurried, too loud. Dexter closed his eyes briefly, savoring the quiet beauty of the moment. He felt the gentle rhythm of the bot's pulse beneath his fingertips, a steady reassurance that echoed the calm beating of his own heart. In that stillness, he understood this was more than an ending. It was a beginning shaped by kindness, curiosity, and the enduring power of connection. And as the morning sun climbed higher, filling the lab with warm light, Dexter knew that whatever the future held, this peaceful moment would remain a guiding light, a reminder that sometimes the greatest journey is the one that leads us back to ourselves. As the day moved forward, the lab remained a quiet sanctuary, a place where light and shadow, science and spirit, met in delicate harmony. The Bedtime Bot's soft glow continued to pulse with steady grace, a beacon of calm in a world often filled with noise and haste. It was more than just a machine, and it was a companion, a guardian of peaceful moments and gentle dreams. Dexter stood quietly, feeling the deep connection that had grown between creator and creation, a bond woven from patience, trust, and the shared experience of discovery. Outside, the world stretched wide and welcoming, alive with the gentle rhythms of life birdsong, the rustle of leaves, the warm touch of sunlight. And inside, the light of the bot seemed to hold the promise of restful nights and hopeful tomorrows, a reminder that even in the busiest of days, there is always space for peace. So as you prepare for your own restful night, remember this gentle journey of curiosity, calm, and connection. May your dreams be soft, your nights peaceful, and your mornings filled with light. Thank you for joining us on this quiet adventure. Until next time, sleep well, and let the calm guide you home. And as the final hum fades, the lab sinks into gentle silence. The Bedtime Bot's light glows steady, holding the room and the night in calm embrace. No more restless thoughts, only the soft weight of dreams waiting to be found. Rest well, for in this quiet morning will come gently